Hi, I'm Michael Stewart. I used to live in Washington, D.C., in the Georgetown suburb. I work for one of the three-letter federal government agencies. My official title is Policy Administrator, which simply means that I perform any task that is assigned to me. I'm usually a problem solver. Complex problems that this three-letter agency would prefer to see go away and disappeared quietly and irrevocably. Don't think I'm like James Bond or Jack Ryan. I'm not like that. These fictional characters are great creations to feed the public's imagination. They are really good fiction, and I have seen every Bond and Jack Ryan movie, as well as the Amazon series, and enjoyed them all. No, I do more mundane things, but it still means I travel a lot. So many. I'm 35, and I used to be an Army officer. I left the military a couple of years ago, about a year after I was promoted to major. I was working at the Pentagon when a three-letter agency came into the military looking for people with the right qualifications and made very good offers to several candidates. I accepted the offer because I wanted new challenges. I was an infantry officer and deployments became repetitive and often involved dodging wides and snipers. Asymmetrical warfare is a challenge, but it's pretty much all I've ever known. The battle against our enemies now is very different from what it was when our fathers and grandfathers served. We now work in an environment where we are constantly surrounded by threats. Over time, this makes you paranoid, and you start seeing an enemy around every corner, even when you are out of shape. It's time to move on and do something else. I had two choices: either leave the army or stay and become an eternal soldier. I chose to leave. My education was related to political science. Yes, social sciences. Please don't mock me too much. I was not a technician, but I was taught to read, understand, analyze, and think through complex problems and find solutions, communicate answers, make plans, and then put those plans into action. The Army taught me to use my own innate common sense to find practical solutions, so I was always looking for the easiest way to fix something. This was usually the best way. My education included a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in international relations. Political science is the understanding of power and people and their relationships. There are many forms of power: political, social, religious, cultural, economic, military, and much more. Most control games involve a mixture of these forms, but the desire for control or power is usually the main thread. This is what makes us humans as a species so unique and complex. Add a little ego, personal ambition, and often greed, and sometimes you get war. I come from a good family that has done well in business. My heritage is Scottish and goes back hundreds of years to the Battle of Culloden, where my ancestors fought against the British in 1746. My ancestors lost this battle and eventually emigrated to Ireland and then to the United States, but the Scots are still fighting for independence from the British. Now they are winning. My father, Edward Stewart, is a successful commercial banker, and my older brother, Charles Stewart, is an investment banker on Wall Street who makes money so fast he can't even keep track of it, or so he says. I know for a fact that he knows where every cent is at all times. So I gave my brother some of my military pay to invest, and not knowing how much I had in my account when I left the military, I was stunned when he handed me the financial statement. Oh my God, I lived frugally while I was in the military, so I put about 20% of my salary into an investment account, so by my simple calculations, I saved about $200,000 over a 10-year period. Well, my dear brother invested well, and my modest nest became just over $4 million. What the hell? I accused him of all kinds of illegal dealings, but in the end I was stunned that I was, as I thought, rich. My brother was incredibly rich in comparison, but that was a different matter and none of my business. Everything was obtained legally, so after realizing my financial situation, I was very pleased. This meant that my wife would be happy when we could buy a nice house. Oh yes, I have a wife. My wife is Amanda Windsor. As you can guess from her name, she is of British descent. I met her at Columbia University while taking a summer course there 3 years ago, while on vacation. I was working on my master's degree, and there was a visiting professor teaching a course I wanted to take. The course was supposed to be useful for me in writing my dissertation, so I took a month off, lived in university accommodation, and completed the course as quickly as possible. I met Amanda, then a third-year law student, in the library coffee shop. We became friends and then went on several dates, dinners and drinks at bars before I had to go back to work in Fort Lewis. We lived on opposite ends of the country, so I assumed that when I left New York, I was unlikely to see her again. I was wrong. Amanda is tall, about 5'10", slender, with long dark brown hair, very beautiful, and from a family in New York with a long tradition of making lawyers and money. My relationship with her was fleeting, and from what little that she told me, her family wouldn't be impressed with a soldier as a companion for her. So I didn't have high expectations, and at the end of the course we exchanged emails and cell phone numbers, said goodbye, and I went back to work. Amanda was not a sexually shy person, and we had sex several times that month. It was intense, sheet-ruffling, sweaty, and really, really fantastic. Trying to combine sex with a hot woman without spending time and a lot of your own money on the course. Well, you understand that I did not plan to start a long-term relationship. My plan was, as they say in operations, get in, get out, and don't make a fuss. Amanda studied environmental law. This has been a growing area with global warming threatening our planet and many governments ignoring the consequences of our collective stupidity. If the inhabitants of planet Earth do not wake up soon, there will be nowhere to live. We needed to make big changes to our lifestyle, but it was expensive, and as we all know, it's all about the money. Power. Money is power on planet Earth. When Amanda graduated, she went to work for a firm in New York, Woodward Johnson Goldstein, or something like that. Her brother Emmett was a lawyer at the same firm, but in a different city. She worked for a senior attorney for a year after graduation to pass the bar exam and become licensed to practice law in New York State. This was a common path for new lawyers. Let's go back a few minutes to explain some important details. I didn't plan for Amanda to call me after my short summer course at Columbia University in New York. It was early October after I had returned to work and was preparing for a short deployment from Fort Lewis to Australia. I was part of a group planning a series of military exercises that would train the military headquarters of other partner countries to work with the United States. It was boring as dog shit, but it had to be done so that the U.S. Army could operate in a multinational environment. Our allies with professional military training, such as Australia, Canada, and Great Britain, were pleasant to work with, but there were many challenges when working with the militaries of other countries that had previously been led by regimes that sought to suppress the people rather than protect them. Imagine. So it was a big surprise to me when my cell phone rang one evening, and when I looked at it, I didn't recognize the number. I thought it was just a scammer calling to tell me that my computer was throwing errors, and if I gave them control and paid $200, they would be happy to fix it. I let the call go to voicemail. Later, when I checked the messages, I was very surprised to hear Amanda's voice. "Michael, this is Amanda. I wanted to call and talk to you. How are you? I might be in Seattle in 2 weeks, so I was wondering if you would have time to meet. You're probably busy and have some. Then the young lady is in bed, so if you can't, that's okay. Call me when you have the opportunity. Bye." I was really surprised to hear from her. I didn't expect that our time together in Colombia would lead to anything more than just a pleasant memory. I had nothing to lose by returning the call to her. I didn't have a new woman in bed. There was simply no time for that now, so I called her back. "Hi, this is Michael. Your message said you might be coming to Seattle in a little while. What's up?" "Hey, Michael, the firm where I'm interning is sending me there to meet with some of the largest companies in Washington state to discuss pollution laws and ways the industry can reduce emissions. Major aircraft manufacturers are trying to lead the way in the fight to reduce emissions from their airplane tailpipes, so it makes sense to get them involved in influencing other big polluters in the Northwest. If you have time, would you like to meet?" My mind quickly ran through my schedule for the next month, and, remembering the dates I was supposed to be in Australia, I replied, "I'd love to see you. Just let me know when you're free and I'll find something interesting. For us, bring clothes for hiking. We talked a little more until the pauses in the conversation became awkward, and then I said that I had to go. 2 days later, when I returned from Canberra, I arranged to meet Amanda at her hotel in Seattle. Seattle is about 40 miles north of Fort Lewis, and while it's not that far, city traffic made it a 90-minute drive. I decided to get a hotel room for the night as I didn't want to drive back late in the evening after a few drinks. I took an overnight bag with me and planned to get up at 5 a.m. in order to get back to base in time. I packed my uniform so I could get dressed in the morning and not have to stop by my apartment before work. I had a tiny, very modestly furnished apartment near the base. This was all I needed since I was hardly ever at home. We had a wonderful evening in Seattle. Amanda had never been to the city before, so I took her on a walking tour of the center and waterfront, popular with tourists. Afterwards, we went to a fish restaurant for dinner and then returned to her hotel. It was late, and I didn't know her schedule, so I didn't expect us to have sex. I was surprised when she invited me to her room. "Come on, big guy, I need you today." That's all she really needed to say, and I was convinced to stay the night with her. "You must have a boyfriend in New York, right?" "What if there is? That doesn't mean I don't want you to fuck me." I didn't get much sleep that night. Amanda is a very sexy woman who loves to take the initiative in bed. Sex for her is first entertainment, and then a way to express desire and affection. Some may confuse this with love. I wasn't in love with her, and she wasn't in love with me. It didn't diminish my enjoyment of it. She knew how to make a man want her. Her eyes spoke volumes, and the curve of her lips, her playful smile told me that she was ready for fun. And we got it. When we walked into her room, it seemed like she was obsessed with having sex right then and there. It only took her 10 seconds to strip and start tearing my clothes to do the same. We repeated this twice more that night. When the alarm went off at 5 a.m., I was exhausted, but I had to suit up in my combat fatigues and head south to work. Amanda had never seen me in uniform before, and I could see from her face that she was both impressed that the man who had taken her last night was a warrior, and that she was somewhat surprised by it. Her comment took me by surprise. "I've never seen you in an army uniform before. You look different. I like it." I wear it almost every day of the week. My uniform is a little different on the weekends." "What do you wear on the weekend?" "Whatever I want, but I usually wear a tuxedo on Saturdays." I tried to say it with a straight face, but she knew I was joking. I said, "Seriously, my hobbies dictate what I wear when I'm not working. Okay, I have to go, duty calls." I kissed her goodbye, thanked her for calling, and told her I had a wonderful night and that I hoped she had a good time too. Those eyes and that smile gave me the answer I was looking for. As I walked to my car, I quietly thought to myself, I hope Amanda is on birth control. I made a mental note to text her later to thank her again for a wonderful night. Maybe even send flowers when she gets back to New York. The next few months were busy for me with 2 additional trips to Australia and a lot of small assignments that kept me very busy. I also began taking flying lessons at a local flying club located at an airbase near Fort Lewis. I finished theoretical classes and started practical flights. The flights took place in a small single-engine aircraft, a Cessna 172. This aircraft is almost impossible to crash if you follow the basics of controlled flight. Checklists are the key to any successful flight, and I was determined to get my private pilot's license before the end of the year. The Army taught me how to parachute out of airplanes. Now I want to learn how to fly them. I sent Amanza a birthday card and also flowers since I knew when her birthday was, December 21st. She shared this personal information while I was in New York for a course at Columbia University. I remembered this for the future and was glad I did it. Women love little things that show you're thinking about them. Plus, the sentimental card was cheap, as was the stamp to send it. I didn't include a return name or address in case she had a boyfriend in New York, and he saw the card from me. There is no point in being the cause of problems. Flying lessons were in the fun category for me. I also enjoyed mountain biking in my free time. I drove a Jeep Wrangler, a four-door model, and installed a bike rack on the rear that slides into the tow bar. The Jeep is a great vehicle that will go almost anywhere I try to take it. It's not an armored fighting vehicle, but it's the next best thing money can buy. My other toy is a BMW Adventure motorcycle. It comes with several features such as heated grips, saddlebags, a GPS system, and an in-helmet communication system if I take a passenger. It's a great bike, and I don't always have the opportunity to ride it. Owning my own plane is on my bucket list someday. A promotion the following spring from captain to major brought a nice increase in salary, but also a lot more responsibility. I was sent to work at the Pentagon in the Army Contingent Planning Department. It's kind of a what-if job. The idea was to create a plan for virtually any problem or situation the Army might encounter, and then figure out what to do about it. This included manpower, weapons and equipment, and whatever we thought might be needed to solve the problem. It was while I was working in this position that I was offered a job at the previously mentioned three-letter agency. They liked the work I did for the Army and wanted me to actually do the same for them. I knew my time in the military would soon be over. A person's brain can only handle so much stress from the threat of an enemy that looks and acts just like the people you are here protecting. It's time to make a change. So I did it and haven't looked back. I had been working at my new job for several months when something completely unexpected happened. Amanda. I met a soldier in Colombia in the summer 3 years ago. He's tall, handsome, athletic, smart, an Army officer, and I think he could be the one. We've kept in touch since I spent a month in his bed that summer. My mother and father may not be impressed by him. There are no military men in our family. My father loves lawyers, almost too much. He wanted me to become a lawyer since I was little, and it was impossible to live with him unless I followed in his footsteps in the family profession. I'd rather poke my eyes out with a sharp stick than do family law or wills and probate. Criminal law might be interesting, but every law school graduate has stars in their eyes, thinking they are the next rock star in the courtroom. Therefore, I turned my attention to environmental law as a path to the future. The Paris Agreement is just the beginning of reducing the pollution that is choking the world. Unless governments and people begin to take action to reverse the catastrophe that is plaguing the planet, well, the future of our existence will be bleak. That's why I decided to specialize in environmental law. There are several large firms in New York that are now spending time and money on environmental law. I work in one of these. My older brother already works there. The first year was spent passing the bar exam, then working with more experienced lawyers on client matters. The problem was that clients were mainly interested in ways to circumvent environmental regulations. The advantages of the job were twofold. Firstly, I traveled a lot around Europe and South America, and secondly, it brought a very good salary. There was another advantage of working at WJG. I met a lot of men who clearly wanted me. My sex life was active, but I was selective about who I allowed between my legs. I called Michael one day as a spontaneous idea when I learned that the firm wanted to send me and my boss to Seattle to meet with clients. I had no idea what Michael was doing after our month-long affair in Colombia. I knew he was an Army officer, and I knew he was single and gorgeous. He was also a very skilled lover. He knew how to please me without detailed instructions or diagrams. I had a little luck, and we arranged to meet in Seattle when he arrived from the base where he was stationed. He arrived on a motorcycle. I think it was some kind of BMW, big and forehead glass. I later learned that this is called an adventure motorcycle. Michael parked the big beast, dismounted, and took off his helmet. God, this man was sexy. I know what you're thinking. It's like a scene from the movie Top Gun. But no, it wasn't like that. Well, maybe a little similar. Michael was muscular and very fit. He radiated a sexiness that was hard to ignore. He was handsome, had a wonderful smile, and the time I spent with him in New York made me realize that if he was mine, I would have to spend a lot of time fending off other women who might want him. But that wasn't a problem now, we were just friends. Besides, I had a boyfriend in New York. I also met with a lawyer from the firm, a guy who was 7 years older than me. worked in the corporate law department of a firm, and had a wife and 2 children. He was great in bed, but it was just recreational sex. I know I have problems. This soldier was to become my main man if I had my way. My current boyfriend was a banker, came from a well-connected family, and that suited my family. I didn't plan anything long-term with him, but that was my business. Thomas wasn't particularly good in bed, but he looked good and acted the way I needed him to be socially acceptable. We looked good together, but that was where it ended. He had no sense of adventure, and although he probably thought about proposing to me, I had no intention of marrying him, and I told him so. Well, maybe I said it in a way that made him think he had a chance to get me to the altar, but deep down he knew our relationship was temporary. Thomas wanted a faithful wife at home and children. This faithful part was the problem for me at this point. A few months later, when I learned that Michael had been transferred to Washington, D.C., I called him and welcomed him to the East Coast. I called his cell phone and left a message. "Michael, this is Amanda. I heard you were moving to Washington, D.C., so I wanted to call and welcome you back east. If you have time, give me a call. I'd really like to see you if you're single. Children? If yes, just ignore it and be happy. If not, please call me and we'll say bye." My attempt at humor was weak with that "if you have a wife and kids" line. What the hell was I thinking? We last saw each other several months ago. I knew his job kept him on the road constantly, and my schedule wasn't any better. His birthday card was postmarked from Washington, D.C., so I took a chance and assumed he had been transferred. My bet paid off. The next day, Michael called me back. When I saw his name on the phone, I was delighted. We talked for almost an hour, and he said he was coming to New York the following weekend. Crap. I need to get rid of the guy. Thomas had exhausted himself, and it was time to move on. I will break up with him gently and even find him a girlfriend to divert his attention. I knew a couple of women in my office who were constantly looking for new men. I made a point to talk about him with the hunters and give out his phone number. He'll be busy enough not to miss me. Besides, he would probably be taken into bed by one of them. A win for everyone. Friday evening arrived. I cleaned the apartment and stocked up on wine, beer, and red meat. Michael was not a vegan or even a vegetarian. He liked steak and some kind of potato to go with it. Usually it was French fries. I was observant enough to know this about him. My attempt to get rid of the guy was successful. I set him up on a date with another lawyer from my firm. She had a reputation for spreading her legs after a drink or two and moved around among several junior lawyers and paralegals. She was somewhat reserved, but rumors of her sexual exploits were a common topic of discussion in the coffee room. Michael was now the focus of my efforts, and my plan was to convince him to keep coming back to me and to my bed. I wanted this man, and I wanted him to want me. Despite any doubts from my family, I knew that this man, this warrior, was the one I wanted. I wanted to be his wife, and I wanted him to be my husband. He was a big catch, and my task now was to lure him. Michael. I decided to take the train to New York on Friday. I left work, took a taxi to the station, and caught the train. I booked a seat in business class on a non-stop route that would take me directly to Penn Station. It was cheaper than flying and less hassle since I didn't have to contend with airport traffic or take a shuttle into town. The train was more comfortable than the plane, and my ticket even included free food, and I bought a beer to wash down my sandwich. The train arrived at Penn Station on time, and since I was traveling light, I quickly got off and went up to the main station. Amanda, to my surprise, was there to meet me. I didn't expect this. I received a huge hug and a much more passionate kiss than I expected. "Michael, I'm so glad you were able to come to town this weekend. Let's get your things, and I have a reservation for dinner." I nodded. "Great. Which subway line should we take?" "No subway. I have a car outside. The company provides me with car service when I need it." I was impressed. My new job in the government gave me the opportunity to get to work in any way that was accessible and convenient for me. We walked out of Penn Station onto 8th Avenue, and a black Lincoln Town car was waiting at the curb. The driver took my bag and put it in the trunk, and we drove to the Upper West Side of the city to Amanda's apartment. The journey took about 20 minutes during evening rush hour. Nothing moves fast in Manhattan on a Friday night. When we arrived, I learned that Amanda lived in a very nice high-rise building. Her apartment was a tiny one-room apartment, but well-furnished. And the good thing was that the building had a 24-hour concierge and underground parking if you had a car. But no one in Manhattan owns a car unless they have to. Cars in Manhattan are a pain. My weekend in New York was memorable. We spent most of the weekend at Amanda's apartment, but did go out to a Broadway show on Saturday night. This was an off-Broadway show and not something I would spend money on again. Well, not everyone can be a winner. For me, the main thing was eating after the show and then going back to Amanda's apartment for afternoon sex. We talked a lot about her work in environmental law and little about my work. I didn't want to go into detail about what I do. I was just starting to settle in and feel confident in my new job. I turned off my BlackBerry. Amanda is one of those women you want to come back to. I wanted her, but at the same time I knew that on Monday morning I would have to get up early and take the train back to Washington and work again. I was hoping that by some miracle the weekend would last longer, something like the movie Groundhog Day. Alas, this was not the case. The sex was amazing. I couldn't get enough of the feeling of this woman next to me, but everything had to end. Monday morning, I got up and dressed in my suit for the trip back to Washington. We said goodbye in the lobby of her building, and I got into a taxi heading to Penn Station. I was on an early train. I promised to call her soon, but also said that I would be out of the country for a week and might not be able to call until I returned. I didn't say where I was going. I didn't know where I was going, but I'll find out when I get to the office. When I called Amanza, she was very enthusiastic about meeting again, and even mentioned that maybe if there was time I could meet her family. It was rapid progress. We went from hot sex to meeting the parents in just a few weeks. Will I be able to pass family verification? Let's see. Last week at work was stressful. I had to go to Shanghai to meet with some foreign intelligence agencies operating in Southeast Asia. I worked in the Transnational Affairs Division of a three-letter agency, and our staff was particularly concerned with counterterrorism efforts. Counterterrorism has become a growing industry, especially with a rise in the number of terrorist groups and their global influence. Suffice it to say that my work was constant and challenging and never ended. This meant I always had my travel bag packed and my passport ready to use. One of my coworkers had what was called a bail bag, kept in a locker in his office. I decided to do the same. I also had a bag in the trunk of my car, ready to use at any time. It contained a change of clothes and some cash, mostly small bills. It also had some other small tools for my use, such as a cell phone and a few other toys that might come in handy. Work got in the way, and it was another 2 weeks before I was able to see Amanda. I called her one day to tell her I was leaving again. She messaged me a few times, and I was able to respond, so we kept in touch. When I returned to my apartment after my last trip to Japan, I decided it would be better to go to New York and visit her. I've practically ignored her for the last month. I knew better than to just show up unannounced, so I sent her a message. I'm back in Washington. Missed you so much. I can come over for the weekend if it's convenient. Let me know. A couple of hours later, I received an answer. I'll call you in the evening. I can read between the lines, and I felt where this was going. After a month of being away, I expected to hear the "I met a new guy" routine. Well, that's probably to be expected. Considering how hot she is, I have no doubt that she will have no shortage of attention and a line of men wanting to get in her pants. I will accept it like a man and move on with my life. That evening, I was in my apartment, dealing with a backlog of household chores like doing laundry and loading the dishwasher and paying utilities. I went for a run to relieve stress, and although I wasn't expecting a "Dear John" on the phone, I was preparing for it and knew I needed to move on and live my life. I opened a bottle of beer. Then my cell phone rang. Amanda. Damn it. Michael didn't even bother to call me sometimes. I thought we were doing well, especially after he was in New York last weekend. We spent most of the weekend in bed, and I made an extra effort to show him a good time. Hell, I even got rid of my last boyfriend to clear the way for him. More than 3 weeks have passed, and now he sends me a message saying, I'm back. Jesus, I need to show him who's boss here. I'll call him after a while when I've calmed down. I wondered what to do all the way home. I really liked Michael, and I think I could have easily fallen in love with him. But I don't fall in love. I separate my feelings into neatly organized compartments that allow me to manage things in my own order, the same way I manage my work. If this relationship with Michael is going to move forward, I need to figure out how to manage it. Yes, this would be the right approach. I'll call him when I get home and pour myself a glass of wine. Michael. My cell phone glowed on the kitchen counter. I saw that it was Amanda. I took a long swig from my bottle of beer, plugged in my headphones, and pressed the answer button. Amanda, I'm really glad you called. I got back this morning. I'm sorry I couldn't call you. I've spent too much time on planes, and between my work schedule and the jet lag, it's killing me. And most importantly, how are you? Michael, it's good to hear your voice. I'm fine. We really need to talk. Here it is. Yeah, I thought you had something on your mind that you needed to tell me. So what do you want to say? Amanda continued, well, I don't know how to say this, but... She trailed off, and there was dead silence for a few seconds. I decided to interrupt. Amanda, I'm a pretty straightforward person, and I think you're the same, so if you want to get rid of me, you can just say it instead of beating around the bush. I'm a grown man. There was silence on the phone again. What makes you think that I want to get rid of you? Well, that's the feeling I got when I saw your message earlier. So is this what you want to tell me? Amanda was a little embarrassed by my directness, but she quickly recovered. No, damn it, that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to ask when you were coming to New York again. It stunned me. Well, I have a few days off before my next trip. Do you come to Washington often? Since I came to New York last time, I was going to invite you here. Silence again for a few seconds. Not sure what this means. This relationship turned into a game of cat and mouse. I tried not to be a mouse. I guess that would be nice, Hey, if you don't want to come here, I understand. Maybe another time. She was on the defensive now, and I could almost feel her trying to take control of the situation again. Amanda is a controlling person. I knew this from the limited time I spent with her, but I was like that too. No, I want to come to Washington. Is this weekend too early? This weekend will do. My apartment isn't as nicely furnished as yours, but I'll try to pick up the dirty laundry and put away the empty bottles. I'll find a broom and maybe even sweep the floor. What? Just send me your travel details and I'll meet you. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. We talked some more and then hung up. This conversation didn't go at all the way I expected. My apartment was small but well-equipped. I lived in a former factory building that was converted into trendy, overpriced apartments a few years ago. When the building was renovated, the apartments became very open plan, but they installed modern bathrooms with large tiled showers and modern kitchens. I bought a couple of partitions to separate the bedroom area from the living and dining areas. This all works for me. The good news is that I had underground parking with space for my car and motorcycle. Unfortunately, Jeep is no more. It was replaced by the Mercedes GLA. I didn't need the all-terrain capability of the Jeep here in the city, but the Mercedes was a great fit as it was small enough to handle traffic and tight parking spots and had a ton of technology that I found handy. On Friday afternoon, I made sure the apartment was ready for a guest, found my spare towels, and restocked the wine and foods I thought Amanza would like. On Thursday, I hired a cleaning service to come and check that the bathroom and kitchen met basic human cleanliness standards. I mean, clean for me is not necessarily clean for a woman, especially when it comes to the toilet in the bathroom. In any case, everything was perfect for Amanda's visit. I only lived there for a few months, and even then I spent most of my time away, so the apartment didn't have the opportunity to get very dirty. I was fully prepared for my first guest since moving to Washington. I even filled up my motorcycle in anticipation of our trip to the great outdoors. If the weather is good, that was my plan for Saturday. Friday night was planned for dinner out with a bottle of wine and good food. Saturday motorcycle ride around the area, and then back here to cook dinner. I can actually cook a few dishes other than MRE. Sunday was flexible depending on when she had to leave back to New York. Lawyers are inherently workaholics. I knew deep down that Amanda was no exception. Michael. The next few months went as expected for two people getting to know each other better, and the relationship progressed to the point where our expectations were that we would eventually get married. Amanda held me in her arms. I admit it. I was in love with this woman and still am. I knew that if any woman was going to be the one, it would be her. I mean, there are many possibilities in life. We meet many people with whom we come into contact, and who knows what feelings we develop towards another person. I'm a realist. I believe that we create our own destiny. If I had ignored this beauty I met at Columbia University, where would my life be today? There is a theory that every decision we make affects our future. I'm not philosophical enough to worry too much about this, but I know that we make important decisions about our lives. The rest is important, but becomes part of the story of our lives. So, I proposed to Amanda. I'm sure she was waiting for me to get up and get to the point. We recently met her family. I think I passed the smell test. Her father was a nice man, in my opinion, and her mother clearly expected me to announce that I was going to make their daughter my wife. Their expectations were not hidden. The weekend I proposed, the weather forecast was great, so I decided to ride my motorcycle to New York. The trip took about 5 hours in Friday traffic. The drive was thankfully uneventful, the traffic wasn't too crazy, and I pulled up to Amanda's house around 7 p.m. I called her after I crossed the George Washington Bridge, and she was outside to meet me. She pressed the button for the garage, and I parked the motorcycle in one of the guest spaces. The weekend promised to be eventful. Friday evening went as I expected. We had dinner at a restaurant nearby, and then returned to Amanda's apartment where the bed was tested again. The sheets were practically ripped off the bed when we took a break for a quick shower to wash off the sweat we had earned, and then a drink. I wanted to keep a clear head this weekend. It was a major turning point in my life. I mean, it's not every day you propose to a woman. Until now, I was primarily a warrior, and everything else in my life came in the background. I quietly asked some of the people I worked with about their home lives, whether they love it or regret it. I received mixed responses and some funny looks. In general, people were happy with their families and lives. Those who had children all said that children were at the center of their existence, and that almost all of their decisions were based on what was good for the children. I called my brother to tell him what I was planning. After he finished laughing at me, he became serious for a minute and moved on to business matters. Listen, Mike, I'm going to do something for you this week to make sure that your investment account is properly protected. I have a close friend who is a lawyer who is an expert in this matter, and he will help you organize everything so that you can make sure your assets are properly protected. What are you talking about? Mike, I'm talking about making sure you don't risk losing half your investment account if this marriage doesn't work out. Damn it, Charles, you haven't even met this woman and you're already thinking about divorce. Hey, little brother, I'm just trying to look out for your best interests. I got serious with Charles for a couple of minutes. Charlie, can I ask you a serious question this time? Brother Charles was silent for a few seconds. Of course you can, Mike. I thought for a few seconds before I said, have you ever regretted getting married? What? Jesus, look, we have 2 children. This binds me and Christina forever, no matter what happens. Children are what bind you to another person for life. Children are the real for better or worse part of the marriage contract. He then continued, if you're wondering if this woman is right for you, now is the time to find out. Before you do anything stupid. Just saying. Thank you, big brother, but I know what and who I want. I made the right choice. Okay, but if you need anything from me, just let me know. Thanks, Charlie. Just don't hide my investments too deep. I may need to buy a house in the coming months, and I'll need some of this small fortune you gave me to afford the place. Just say the word and you'll be done. My brother has always been on my side. I knew that. Now it's my turn. Did I read the signals correctly? Saturday started off well and only got better as the day went on. We stayed in the apartment in the morning. I got up early to go to the bathroom and make coffee. The army taught me that coffee is my friend in the morning. As long as Juan Valdez continues to grow coffee and I can get a cup in the morning, everything will be fine. Some may disagree, but on this issue, I don't care. I brought Amante coffee in bed. She was still naked, with a sheet covering her chest. We drank coffee and talked about everything and nothing. We smiled at each other a lot. After a few sips of coffee, she handed me her cup and ran to the bathroom to pee. When she returned, I grabbed her hand, pulled her onto the bed, and kissed her. Amanda. Oh my Jesus. I hold on to it like a life jacket, and I'm like a drowning woman. I can't let him go. And now, in bed, he says that he wants me, now and forever. I think he just proposed to me. Oh my God. I need to make sure he actually said what I think he said. This is exactly what I wanted. I just need to make sure I don't mix anything up. I want to give myself to him like I have never given myself to another man. Now I belong to him. Only for him. I'm no one else's. And I own it. 30 minutes later, this handsome man, who had just fucked me half to death, got off the bed and walked naked into the kitchen. He made coffee and brought 2 cups back to the bedroom. Looking at a naked man, my naked man, walking towards me with cups of coffee was incredibly sexy. Michael sat down on the bed next to me. Our backs were pressed against the pillows that were stacked at the head of the room. I laid my head on his chest. We drank coffee, but were silent. Finally, the silence was broken. He said, "Did you hear what I said to you when we had sex? I think you said you want me, now and forever. Is this your sneaky way of telling me you want to get married?" Yes, it is. I meant every word. I've thought about this a lot. If you didn't know, I love you. I want you. I want you to become my wife. I looked into Michael's eyes and smiled at him. He smiled back at me. I wanted him so bad. He then took out a small box from the bag next to the bed. Oh my God, I gasped when he took out this little box and opened it. My naked man of steel turned on his side to look at me. Amanda Windsor, will you be my wife, my lover, my best friend, and my partner in life? I was overjoyed, but at the same time I hesitated with my answer. Oh my God, I paused for a few seconds before I could collect my thoughts and speak like an intelligent person. The whole time Michael was waiting for my answer, he smiled his millionth smile, which turns me between my legs, makes my stomach flutter. My hand was at my mouth, and I held my breath. Oh, honey, yes, I want to be your wife, your lover, and anything else you want. Michael took my left hand and placed a beautiful diamond ring on my finger. I hugged him and kissed him, and then we climbed down onto the sheets and repeated what we had already done this morning. I love the way he makes love to me. He is assertive, but at the same time gentle. He knows how to please me. He knows what I like and what I don't. He knows that I like to be somewhat submissive, but he also knows to respect me, and in the end, he is gentle and loving and takes the time to make sure I get what I need. He is the whole complex, and now he's mine, and I am him. Michael. Well, damn it, I did it. I asked Amanda to marry me, and she agreed. The weekend in her apartment was non-stop sex. We only got out of bed to go to the bathroom, shower together, eat a few meals, and then get back to what was important: great sex. This woman has a crazy sexual need. She's almost as needy as I am. I control my need for sex through my own discipline and sole focus on what is important to me at the moment. If I don't do this, I could mess things up, and it could end up costing our nation, more or less. The following weekend, we went to Amanda's mother and father to share the good news, and for Amanda and her mother to begin serious wedding planning. I wanted a very casual and small wedding limited to family and a few friends. Her mother had other plans. The social status of the Windsor family had to be respected, and so instead of 40 or 50 guests, there were more than 200. cost was important to me as I had simple tastes and preferred to spend my money on things that satisfied my need for adventure. Mrs. Windsor needed to be at the center of the social universe of Connecticut's elite. Oh my God. My compromise was to insist on keeping costs down since my plan was for my new wife and I to travel to several interesting places. We were going to visit Scotland and Ireland and experience the simpler way of life of the wonderful people who live there. I had planned a hike for us to Ben Nevis in the Highlands. Amanda was all for exploring my Scottish heritage. I was able to trace my family back to the time of Robert the Bruce in the 13th century and my family's migration to Ireland years after the Battle of Culloden, when the politics of the region meant it might be better to look for a more suitable place to live. Ireland was deep in famine, and so it was necessary to go to America and settle there. America was good for our family, and we prospered. I felt it was important to give back by serving in the military and doing my part to protect America and its interests. Although I am not in the military now, my job is still to protect our nation. I take this mission seriously. 2 years later. Amanda, when are you coming home? I asked my wife on the phone. She was in some part of the world that I needed to remember where she was. She was in Madrid. Yes, that's where she was. Why is she there? There was some kind of environmental conference that she attended. Her firm represented one of the major oil and gas companies, and they wanted to appear as concerned about the environment as they were about profit and loss in their annual report to shareholders. I haven't seen my wife for several weeks. Between her schedule and mine, we became strangers. I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia. I can't tell you what I did there, except that my days were long and filled with listening to analysts deciphering what was going on with several terrorist groups that were doing not so good things around the world. The tentacles of terror extend to almost every country. Governments are spending enormous resources to find them and stop them before they can cause big problems. What I do, you'll never see on the news at 6 o'clock. What I do will lead to actions that are best left behind the scenes. My job is to connect the disparate threads of action and money that fuel terrorist organizations. If I can deprive them of toys and money, they won't be able to do what they want. She replied, "Darling, I should be home in 4 or 5 days, as soon as this conference is over, and we conclude some contracts. In a week at most." Jesus, Amanda, I'm almost starting to forget what you look like. Send me a selfie so I can recognize you when you return. Ha, you've got to be kidding, big boy. Where are you now? It doesn't matter, you probably can't answer, otherwise you'll have to kill me. We joked like this often. Amanda, I miss you like crazy. I'm so tired of being away from you and home. I need some rest. How about we take a few days off after you get back and go skiing in Colorado? Honey, that sounds great. Write to me the dates when you are free, and I will try to come up with mine. I haven't skied for many years. Sorry to finish quickly, but I have to go. I love you. Write to me. And so it was. We lived like this for months. We worked our butts off, and then, when we were overwhelmed with fatigue, we ran away for a few days to be alone and get to know each other again. The last time I left home, I went to Japan for a week. Work there was going well, but that meant the UK would be the next stop. The flight to a military base outside London was long and uncomfortable. The plane was a C-17 military transport flying in the direction I wanted, so I joined the flight. This was a little over 3 weeks ago. I missed my wife. I missed her touch. I should have put her out of my mind for a few more days and then focused on her and only her. The only problem was the woman who was in my bed last night. Rebecca Williams. That was her name. She worked in the 5th section of British intelligence. She was a former British Army intelligence officer. She switched to intelligence in much the same way as I did in the United States. She was tall, and in addition to being smarter than most people in the room, she was incredibly beautiful. We worked together off and on for over a year. We spent countless hours together, and this led to us spending additional hours together in my hotel room. She was married to a doctor who usually worked in a hospital near London, but was now working with Doctors Without Borders somewhere in North Africa. In fact, for over a year now. She was also married to her job. She is the most intense person I know. Besides being smart, she had a strange sense of humor. She made me smile, and in my work, I rarely smile. Rebecca took me out for dinner and drinks one evening when we decided to put thoughts of fighting terrorists aside for a few hours. She showed a different side to her personality, and I laughed at some of her statements. We kissed goodbye at the hotel, and then, before I knew it, I was tearing off her and my clothes and hugging her naked body, kissing her skin. We ended up on the bed, and as they often say, the rest is history. I put all thoughts about Amanda out of my head for a few hours. Right then and there, I was focused on exploring every inch of that beautiful body. When we unraveled, the sheets almost completely slipped to the floor, and the pillows were also there. Oh my God, Amanda. I hate environmental law almost as much as I hate, well, a lot of things. Environmental law, as practiced in large law firms, is not about the environment. It's about making sure the environment doesn't impact the huge profits that are at stake. This is done to make it seem like huge corporations care about global warming and pollution when they really don't care. But it brings in a lot of money, and I can travel to many places that are exciting and even exotic. Right now, I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. More specifically, I'm at a luxury hotel on the beach south of town. The actual work that I had to do when I arrived here is already completed, and now I have 2 days to relax and have fun. The party includes me and one other person, a man, another lawyer. He is one of my many bosses, Jake, 40 years old. He is a new partner in the firm and has a wife and 2 children, a son and a daughter. Jake is also tall, handsome, and very confident. His demeanor is very smooth. He can talk to anyone and convince them of what he needs. My inability to be monogamous also plays a role here. Don't get me wrong, I love my husband very much, but I have needs that my marriage can't meet, at least not right now. With our work and travel schedules, I sometimes only see my husband a few days a month. It's now been more than a month since we saw each other. I can't go that long without male attention. I need the feeling of a man inside me. It's wrong, I know, but that's the reality. Before Michael, there were always men in my life. I always had a boyfriend or two. And since I started working in WJ&G, there were several men who, from time to time, occupied my bed or I occupied theirs. This bed is always in a secluded place, and the amount of time I spend with them is always limited to what I consider appropriate for the time and place. Right now, we're in Sao Paulo, and we have 2 free days to have a good time before I go home and get back to reality. I have the ability to compartmentalize things in such a way that I can quickly switch from one thing to another, often in a matter of seconds. This is part of my talent as a lawyer. I talked to Michael yesterday, and we planned a ski trip after we both got home. I have to keep my phone handy because he will text me the dates when he is free. I want to spend as much time as possible with my husband. Despite what I do with other men, I love my husband. I plan to spend as much of my life with him as possible. Ultimately, we both want children. We're still in our early 30s, but I know our clock is ticking, and we need to get our act together in the next few years. If we want to start a family, we need to do this. I can't imagine a better man to father my children than Michael. Right now, I'm sitting in a very small bikini under an awning. The waiter makes sure our glasses are always full, and Jake reads his emails on his phone. I have a paper book with me that I am reading. I don't want to tan too much because the tan will be suspicious and hard to explain when I get home and undress in front of my husband. He will understand that my trip was not only work, and will want to know who I enjoyed the beach with. Therefore, it is best to apply plenty of sunscreen and stay in the shade. I made a mental note that I would suggest that Michael take a vacation somewhere in the Caribbean in the winter. Then I can get that tan I want. I have no idea where Michael is now. I think he was heading to Japan again. These little Japanese girls can be very attractive and seductive if they want to. I hope he's not sleeping with one of them. My little soldier is always busy with work. It focuses like a laser beam. He is tireless in everything he sets his mind to. That's one of the qualities I love about him. I love this man. Jake has made reservations at the best restaurant in the area, so I'll wear the new dress I bought. It's light blue, one of my favorite colors, and it's made of silk, so it's crazy expensive and shows a lot of cleavage. It is ideal for this climate. Jake will be delighted. He will especially like to take it off me after dinner. My affair with Jake has been going on for several months. He is the second man in the company with whom I have an affair. As a partner in the firm, he has the influence to help my career, and like a man with his natural talents, he knows how to please a woman. We both know how this system works. I do my part, he does his. I am a very mature woman for my age, and I know how the world works. I also know what I want, and am not afraid to go after it. So yeah, Jake is doing his part, and I'm using him for what I want. One of the things I want is a skilled lover in my bed. I don't confuse sex with love. I clearly separate these two things, but I like the feeling of Jake when he's next to me. This will be the longest period we will spend together. Usually at home in New York, it's only a few hours, and then we get back to reality and our busy lives. This trip is different. Jake scheduled the meetings so that we could spend 2 days together here in Brazil. Jake is very aware of the need to be careful. He would have to do some serious damage control work if it became known that he was having sex with another woman. The firm knows what its employees do, but expects them to be careful to protect its reputation and stable revenue stream. A scandal, even a hint of it in the legal community, would be a disaster for everyone. So, as a partner, Jake enjoys the perks of his position, but also has big goals in mind. I know that if it became known that I was his mistress, I would be fired at once. Therefore, caution is my motto. 2 more nights here, and we're on a plane back to New York. I hope Michael comes home soon. I need my little soldier. I need my husband. Rebecca. Last night, my idiot husband called me on FaceTime. He said he had been asked to stay on a mission in Africa for another 6 months. What the hell was he thinking? I have a very good idea of what he is thinking. He thinks this will give him another 6 months to have the nurse he currently sleeps with. He needs to know that I'm not stupid enough to not know what he's doing. I work for British intelligence, for God's sake. I can easily check it. And I called his boss and directly threatened him if he didn't tell me the truth about Will. After a while, he admitted what was happening. I'm not a prude or a fool, so I made it clear that I didn't want to be a stupid wife waiting at home. I was pretty sure our marriage was over a long time ago. I also knew that my needs told me that I wanted more than self-gratification. When Michael Stewart came on the scene, it wasn't a difficult decision for me. I knew right away that I wanted this man in my bed. For how long, I didn't know then. Then I did something that was semi-legal and at least pushed the boundaries a little. I asked the people I work with to do a quick background check on Michael. I did this under the pretext that I wanted to learn more about the person I would be working with over the next few months. When the report revealed that he was married to a woman who is a lawyer in Manhattan and they had no children, I decided to dig deeper. My contacts in New York easily provided me with the information I needed, and then I decided to see how far Michael Stewart would go. The most interesting part was the discovery that Michael's wife, Amanda Windsor, in addition to being an environmental lawyer at a large Manhattan firm, was also cheating on her husband. The agent we used in New York had no trouble finding out about her extramarital affairs. The report describes her as highly confident and with a high sense of self-esteem. Maybe it will humble her a little if she knows that her wonderful husband is also having his fun with me. My marriage is falling apart. According to the latest information I received 2 weeks ago, the nurse my husband is sleeping with is 3 months pregnant. So Michael Stewart looks very attractive now, and it may not be such a big challenge to make him your permanent partner, especially after Mrs. Windsor's affairs become known to Mr. Stewart. The next few months will be revealing. Michael. I both love and hate my job. I am proud to protect America and the world from terrorists. I hate that my job keeps me away from my wife for such long periods. This schedule, being apart for weeks at a time, is not conducive to a stable relationship with Amanda. I knew that before our marriage, there were many other men in her life. I try not to think about it too much, lest ego and paranoia cause me to lose focus on the big goals. At the same time, I'm a realist. I know that Amanda is not used to going without sex for a long time. She just can't. It is her. I also know that she's cheating on me with another lawyer at her firm. This guy is the second one I've known about since our wedding. He is a little older than her and is married. He has a good family. Why are married people with children the most eager to find someone on the side? Maybe he doesn't get enough home from his wife, or they're tired of each other, or it's just the excitement of not getting caught. The thing is, I know about it. I just prefer to turn a blind eye to it. I have my reasons. Bye. Every time I'm away from Amanda, I quietly go to the agency doctor and get tested for all the common infections and even STDs. They are good at getting results within 24 hours. I do this after every trip if I've been adventurous. I always use protection and am very selective about who and what I do with. This trip was, well, all I can say is that the woman I was with is someone I could easily fall in love with if I weren't already in love with another woman. I need to get home. I need to see my wife. I need to get my thoughts in order. I need to get Rebecca out of my head. This may be difficult as in 2 weeks I will need to travel to the UK again and will be working with her again. Crap, Amanda. I love skiing, but I'm not very good at it. My little soldier is good at almost everything. His natural physical ability and coordination work to his advantage in almost everything he sets his mind to. We're staying 4 nights in a luxury ski lodge right next to the slopes. We arrived, took a taxi to the lodge and quickly settled in, then checked the quality of the bed. What I really wanted to test was the quality of my husband. Honey, what have you been doing for fun the last 2 months? This was really an open question, but I was curious as it was obvious that a few things had happened. His physique had changed, he had gained more muscle, and there were a couple of marks on his body that weren't there last time. What are those marks on your sides? I trained hard in unarmed combat. It's a form of martial arts, and as you can see, I take it way too seriously. It helps me relieve stress from work. It's time for your wife to take care of you. And I did it. We left our room around 8 o'clock to have dinner and then returned for further testing of the bed. This man is all man, my man. I forget everything when he holds me in his arms. I forget about everything when he's inside me. I just go for it. I love the feeling of Michael when he takes me. Michael is always focused, but even he has primal needs that need to be satisfied. I just hoped his primal needs weren't being met by another woman. This was the biggest threat to my marriage as I saw it. I guess I'm being a little hypocritical by diving into the pool of infidelity. But I'm not like most women. I have needs that need to be met, otherwise my world doesn't work. And I have never let my husband down, never. He gets my undivided attention when we are together. He gets 100% of my love. He gets all of me when we are together. I want this gorgeous man to make me pregnant. I want to be the mother of his child. He knows this. I just need to remove my dude. Michael. Amanda wanted to know how I got the bruises. I told her part of the truth, but not all of it. I said this as I turned to look at my ribs. In truth, some of these marks were from my last encounter with Rebecca. I thought it best not to mention that my sparring partner was a 34-year-old woman who could easily kick most men's ass without breaking a sweat. Another point best left unmentioned was that some of the scratches could have been from our time together in her apartment. Right now, Amanda and I are getting to know each other again. Oh my God, sex with my wife is the best. Time passes too quickly as I enjoy her body next to mine. Between my work schedule and hers, we spend too much time apart. Maybe that's why she hasn't gotten pregnant yet. I mean, having a family is what I want, but it requires being together more than a few days a month. This is crazy, and we need to fix it. There wasn't much skiing on this holiday. Most of the time was spent testing the quality of the mattress in a hotel room. We had time to eat and did a couple of runs down the slopes on the 3rd day. The 4th day came too quickly, and we had to fly back east to Washington. Amanda and I spent a few days at home, but she worked from her laptop, and I had to go to the office to check on what was going on with my main project and prepare for the next trip. Amanda soon took the train back to New York, and I flew to London. 1 month later. Amanda. Oh shit. This coffee is going wrong. Why do I feel like I'm going to throw up? I probably have some kind of virus. I'll see a doctor in a day or two if this doesn't go away. Too late. I grabbed the trash can in my office and threw out the coffee and croissant I had for breakfast. One of the paralegals who was with me asked if I was okay. I don't usually vomit at 8:30 am, but the last few days' coffee hasn't been sitting well in my stomach. Jan, the legal assistant, looked at me critically, then asked, "Tell me, are you pregnant by any chance?" What? No, I'm sure not. I mean, damn. I am pregnant? I had to sit down. The expression on my face spoke of confusion and, even more confusion. In an instant, I was both delighted and excited. Two competing thoughts were running through my mind almost simultaneously. The first, "Oh my God, I might be pregnant," was followed by, "Oh crap, I might be pregnant." My first thought was that Michael and I might be starting a family. The second, damn it, was about the fact that Michael might not be the father. My heart started beating faster, and I knew I was starting to feel out of breath. Jan looked at me with wide eyes. I needed to think. What the hell should I do? Then Jan broke the silence. "Amanda, do you have a pregnancy test?" No, was my weak answer. Her face visibly lit up, as women do when they are happy to hear about other women's pregnancies. I mentally counted the date of my last period and then grabbed my phone to check the dates I was in Brazil. Damn. Jan jumped up. "Come on, we need to go to the pharmacy urgently." She grabbed my hand, and before I knew it, we were running towards the elevator. The pharmacy was a block away, and they had a wide selection of pregnancy tests. We bought 3 and quickly returned to the office. Jan took off her coat and threw her purse on the table, and squeezed a plastic bag with purchases into my hands and dragged me to the women's restroom. She hurriedly unwrapped one of the tests and handed it to me. I looked at him like he was a grenade. In a sense, it was a grenade. Depending on the outcome, it could change my life and Michael's life forever. Jan stood with a pregnancy test, handing it to me. I looked at him for what seemed like an eternity, but it was only a few seconds. That's when my vision narrowed and I felt dizzy. I ran to the sink and threw up again. Jan took a paper towel, wet it, and handed it to me. I rinsed my mouth with water and wiped my face. She handed me the small piece of white plastic again and said, "Okay, go ahead and pee on this. If you're pregnant, you need to know as soon as possible. If not, it might be worth seeing a doctor about nausea and vomiting." Jan opened the toilet stall door and looked at me. I approached slowly, feeling that I was walking towards an unknown fate. Perhaps it was so. A hand appeared from under the door, waving to pick up a small piece of white plastic. I gave it to Jan. I opened the door and walked out to see Jan holding the test. "I didn't look at it. You need to see the result for yourself. Do you want me to leave you alone?" I was still in shock at the thought that I might be pregnant. The actual pregnancy is another matter. Jan put the test back in the box without looking to see if there were 2 blue stripes on it. One line, "Not pregnant," no problem. 2 stripes, life changes completely and forever. Maybe. I walked on shaky legs back to my office and closed the door. A million thoughts flashed through my head in a chaotic mix of random things. Without realizing it, I went into damage control mode. This was my legal thinking. I needed options. Oh, Jesus. The first thing I had to do was look at this damn piece of white plastic. I sat down in my chair and with trembling hands opened the box and took out the test. Jan wrapped it in a napkin so I couldn't see the result. My hand was shaking so much that I had to sit and breathe for a few seconds to calm down. "You can do it. You can handle it. You're an adult and you have the resources for this," I thought. I removed the napkin from the dough and turned it over to see the result. 2 blue stripes. Michael. I love the English countryside. Everything is green and lush almost all year round. Even driving on the left side of the road is no longer a problem for me. I've been here enough that it doesn't bother me. I just have to remember when approaching the first roundabout to stay to the left so I don't cause a massive accident. The food and beer here are first class in my opinion, and although I rarely have time to enjoy it, I try not to waste the few moments I have. This trip was intense, and I worked long days. We were getting closer to dismantling a network of scoundrels operating north of London. We tracked them to a warehouse near Heathrow Airport, and the British police were busy doing surveillance to find out who was coming and going from the place. The proximity to Heathrow gave them the opportunity to get things and people into the country and get them out without too much trouble. There were a lot of shady characters working at the airport, so it wasn't much of a problem getting something through British customs. Money was the lubricant that lubricated it all. I've been here for almost 3 weeks now, and to be honest, I miss home. I'm tired of living in hotel rooms, and I really miss my wife. You're surprised I said that, right? Well, despite my recent affair with Rebecca, I really love my wife. I enjoy my time with her, and I miss her now. We've talked about starting a family several times, and the last time we talked was while we were at a ski resort in Colorado. Amanda is a class act. She is smart, elegant, well-mannered, thoughtful, beautiful, and many more adjectives I could use to describe her. I was lucky enough to meet her at Columbia University that summer. This chance meeting truly changed my life, or at least most of it. But my life is much more complex now than it was when I was just an Army officer, with a clear mission and a well-defined set of orders that described the end product of my work. Now everything is completely different. The agency was more flexible in terms of what I did, where, and for how long. Success has not been defined in clear terms, but has been measured in smaller metrics that are reflected in a shaky and ever-changing definition of national security. National security was something that the government defined. The national security of the United States was closely linked to the national security of many other countries, which is why I spent so much time away from home. I'm not sure how much longer I can maintain this pace. I probably need a break from this work, and I can see the day when I will be done with this matter. If I have a family with children to take care of, that will be a big factor to consider in the mix of factors that determine when I take a break from this work. This is not happening now. I need to be focused and keep the goal in mind. This current mission is important as it will lead us to further targets in a region where navigation is very difficult. Rebecca. Michael had been back for some time, and our mission to track down a terrorist cell operating north of London was going well. He and I continue to work together, and indeed, my time with him is both professionally and personally satisfying. It took about 2 weeks after Michael returned before he ended up in my bed. Now, you might think that's a bit of time, but for me it was too long. You see, Michael is the kind of person who, despite his strong sexual urges, also has some principles. I know he knows what his wife does when he's away. Oh, don't think she's openly demonstrating her infidelity. Against. She tries very hard to separate Michael from the other men in her life. She is practical about it and is careful to ensure that her two worlds never intersect. It is not easy. For me, I'm not so conflicted. I filed for divorce from my husband while he was in Africa with MSF. His nurse lover is pregnant with his child, and while this in itself is not something grandiose in the wide range of life events, for me it was a signal that our shaky marriage was completely destroyed. It was time to call a spade and move on. I've been emotionally distant for a long time, and I know that he does too. I sincerely wish him happiness and hope that he and his new family will be happy. Right now, my life is simple. I take my profession seriously, and I take my time with Michael seriously. I want him in my bed. It's simple. I am deeply attached to this man. First of all, he is a warrior. He has the ability to focus with laser precision on his mission and not be distracted by peripheral issues. I guess that's why his idiot wife can hide her infidelity. I call her a fool because she is stupid to take a lover when her husband is not around. If Michael were my husband, this wouldn't have happened. Now Michael and I are just colleagues with benefits. I need to keep a close eye on what the fool does in the coming months before I make my move. If she is as clumsy as I think, there will be no problem sending her away, and then the man will be mine. He drives me crazy when he looks at me. I get wet just thinking about his touch. You may think I'm heartless and cruel, but I know what I want. I want Michael. I have a plan to show him what a fool a woman is, and then he will decide what to do. I am a good judge of character, and I know that his pride and self-esteem will not allow him to put up with a wife who does what she does. Not if they want to be together for a long time. Amanda is not someone who wants to raise children, bake cookies, and take care of the house. No, that's not her style. She's gotten a taste of the power and prestige that a career as a corporate lawyer can bring, and she loves it. Money is never an issue for American law firms. They seem to float in them. She earns a great salary and loves to spend it. Her ego is fed every day, and she loves the taste. A lover on the side is like cream for a cat. Michael. My brother called today. One of my phones vibrated in my briefcase. It vibrated for a while before I realized my flip phone was making a sound. I only gave this number to a few people. Amanda, some family members including my older brother, my dad and mom, and a few others. When I looked at it, the phone stopped vibrating, which meant the call had gone to voicemail. I put the phone in my pocket and checked it later. My brother and I usually make an appointment when I'm home, so I was interested to see his number and name on the phone screen. I immediately thought something had happened to someone, and he was calling with bad news. I opened the phone and said, "Chuck, what happened?" His tone was joyful, so I immediately realized that no one had died. It was good. "Hey, little brother, I'm calling to give you a report. That's what you Army guys call it, right?" "Yes, that's what it's called. Continue, welcome." "Okay, this is all Army talk that I know, so I will speak in English so you understand what I want to convey." "You've got my attention, brother." "Okay, I'm actually calling with good news for you. Your investment portfolio performed very well last year, and you made a lot of money. That $4 million you started the year with is now $9 million. What the hell? Did you rob a bank? Man, I'm very good at what I do. You become rich. Not as rich as me, of course, but you're doing great." My mind was a little reeling from this amazing news. Wow, I don't know what to say other than thank you very much, Chuck. I mean, it's hard to imagine that amount of money in my bank account. Chuck laughed again. "Wait, the money isn't in your bank account yet. I invested almost everything in the market to make you even richer." My mind was racing, and I was forming a plan to make sure I would have a source of money in case I needed to change jobs. "Chuck, you are a genius. I have to go, but I want to talk to you later about some things I want to do with some of this money, and I want your advice before I make any decisions. Does it suit you?" "Hey, it's your money, Mike. You can do whatever you want with it. Let's talk later." With that, my brother ended the call and left me to contemplate the news that my investment had been incredibly successful. So successful that I needed to think about what I wanted to do with that money. I knew right away that I wanted to protect some of them. I wanted to create a secure nest to use if I changed jobs. Realistically, I knew I couldn't continue at this pace for long without personal consequences, not just for me, but for those I care about. I need a plan. Amanda. Wow, this morning sickness is starting to get annoying. I can't even smell the coffee without starting to vomit. Breakfast is not at all appetizing. This morning I was only able to eat a little yogurt. Crap. It's been 2 days since I took a pregnancy test. During this time, I checked 4 other tests in the hope that the first one was wrong. Unsuccessfully, they all show 2 stripes. Crap. I need to call Michael and tell him to come home. I want to tell him the news in person and see his reaction. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what I do when we're apart. At least I'm going to keep it a secret. The last thing I want is for him to find out and file for divorce. The thought that keeps running through my head is, what the hell are you doing, Amanda? I thought I was old enough and smart enough to manage my husband and temporary lover on the side. I have needs. I need more than Michael can give me now. I need the feeling of a man next to and inside me. Michael is the perfect man for me. The problem is that he's not around all the time. I wish there was one. I wish he didn't have that damn job in Washington. I wish he was in my bed every night. But damn, he's no longer home than home. What should I do? I can't go weeks without my husband. My body craves the attention of a man. I can't function without it. The longer I go without it, the more desperate I become, and the more I have to do something. That's why I have a lover. That's why I sleep with Jake. We meet once a week for a few hours. In the end, we both leave happy and ready to move on with our lives. This is no one's business but mine. Michael will never know about this. But now I have a more important question. I need to tell my husband that I'm pregnant. I need him here. Michael, Lord Almighty, this mission is getting boring. We've been watching these nasty bastards for months now. We listen and see where they go and who they meet. They are smart and careful in their actions and connections. But in the end, we are smarter. We have the resources and technology to catch them. But this country has laws, and we must follow them. Otherwise, the terrorist group will be free, and then we will have to pay dearly for it. I need sleep, a hot shower, good food, and a long run to clear my head. I try to call my wife at least every other day. The last call was a little strange. She was out of her mind. I don't know how out of it she was, but she wasn't the same as usual. She was distracted on the phone. It was clear that she was not listening to what I was saying. We didn't talk long, but she asked me when I'd be coming home. I realized that this was her main concern. When I got home, something was happening. I needed to be there and find out what it was. My problem at the moment was getting out of London. My bosses at home were not keen on me leaving London and returning home unless it was absolutely necessary. Since I didn't know what awaited me at home, trying to convince them that I needed to go home for a while was a difficult task. Reluctantly, they agreed that I could take the weekend and Monday and Tuesday to go home and see Amanda. Rebecca was very quiet when I explained to her that I was leaving London for a few days to return home. She simply nodded at me, indicating that she understood that I had a home life, even if that home life was very limited. I took my bag and caught a taxi to Heathrow. Rebecca, I saw Michael suffer as he told us that he needed to go home to Washington or New York for a few days. He simply said that he needed to go home to his wife. I assumed that something might have flared up in her. I knew that she had a lover on the side. Her ability to be faithful to her husband disappeared even before she married him. I received reports from our agents in New York that confirmed what I knew. Amanda had a sexual relationship with another lawyer at the firm where she worked. I decided from the beginning to keep my knowledge of Amanda's extramarital affairs to myself. I was almost sure that Michael knew exactly what his wife was doing. If he didn't know it, it would soon become known. Eventually, these things usually come to light. I knew from my marriage that people cannot hide what they do for long. My own husband had sex with one of the nurses he worked with for Doctors Without Borders in Africa. She was pregnant with his child, and we divorced. I'm a realist, if nothing else. Life in the military and serving in national security taught me a lot. The main thing is to keep your eyes and ears open and observe what is happening around you. I understand people. I understand what motivates them, what makes them do what they do. I'm not a psychologist, but I understand human nature. I also understand Michael. He is a very strong person, both physically and mentally. He understands many of the same things that I understand, and he is very driven when it comes to what he believes in. This does not mean that he is ready to allow his wife to openly cheat on him, but he knows that his wife is a very driven woman who has needs and is not going to give up on what she wants. Michael's self-discipline is amazing. He is very reserved, but he sometimes surprises me. The small number of times I was able to lure him into my bed told me that he is also extremely passionate. He can be both assertive and loving. He is the man I want. I just have to be patient and wait for Amanda to ruin everything, and then I will be next to Michael. I'm very patient. Amanda, I just received a text from Michael. I'm flying to New York tonight on an overnight flight. See you tomorrow. Me, great, I can't wait for you to come home. Safe flight. Love you. Jake handed me my iPhone when he saw I had a message. We were at the hotel and had just finished our weekly meeting. It's always a pleasure to spend time with him. He understood my needs and always knew how to satisfy my desires. He didn't try to replace Michael, no, he knew he couldn't do it. He didn't want this. He had his own life and family, and he wanted them to always come first. Jake was a realist who understood our relationship the same way I did. It made sex with him so good. It was just sex. You're probably asking why, now that I know I'm pregnant, I'm still having sex with Jake. Well, I wish I had a good answer to this question, but I don't have one. It's difficult and simple at the same time. I'm not some bitch. I am a woman with complex needs and a psychology that drives me to get what I want. I understand power and I understand what motivates people. I need regular sex to feel satisfied. It validates me as a woman. The ability to choose who I have sex with affirms my power over my body and the environment. Strange, I know. I wanted to feel Michael next to me every day, but circumstances and life dictated something else. It's a pity that this is so. I wanted my husband to be next to me. I wanted my husband in my bed, our bed, every night and waking up next to him every morning. God, how I wish I could control the urges that make me do what I do. But I cannot. We showered and dressed, and after making sure we were ready to be seen, we left the hotel. We never kissed in public or showed any signs of affection other than what might be normal for two people working at the same law firm. I walked out the front door, turned right, and walked the 2 blocks to my office. Jake walked in the opposite direction and took a taxi to meet the client. Life went on. That evening, I heard my phone ring and saw Michael's plane land. He sent a message, "Taxi on the way to your apartment." I have already prepared wine for him and food for us. I had bought Chinese takeout earlier in the evening, and it was waiting to be eaten after he arrived. My plan was to meet my husband with a glass of wine and food, then show him the pregnancy test and tell him he was going to be a father. And then I was going to take him to bed and have sex with him until I was exhausted, and never let him go. Michael. I was able to board a British Airways flight directly from Heathrow to JFK. He took off late in the afternoon, and since he was flying west, I arrived in New York in the evening. I took the train to Central Station. It's a tedious way to get into town, but it's cheap and probably the best if you don't have a ton of luggage. I had a small bag and an old leather briefcase, so luggage wasn't a problem. I'm used to public transport. It's the only way to get around in big cities, and taking the train into the city didn't bother me. At Grand Central Station, I took a taxi to Amanda's apartment. I still think of it as her apartment, not ours. When I arrived at the front door, I was greeted by a doorman who recognized me and informed me that there was probably Chinese food waiting for me. I grinned and thanked him for the tip coup. I got out of the elevator and walked down the corridor, not knowing what surprises awaited me. When I rang the doorbell, it opened almost immediately. My wife, to whom I had been married for just over a year, greeted me with a big smile. I walked in, dropped my bags, and took her in my arms and kissed her. I heard you ordered Chinese food for dinner. Any leftovers? I am starving. Amanda laughed. Looks like Roger ratted me out. I haven't eaten yet. I waited for you. I closed the door with my foot. The rest of the night went as I expected. The food came after sex. The sex was hot, urgent, sweaty, and explosive all at the same time. Amanda knew how to please me, and she did it. 2 hours passed before we got to eat. I poured us some wine while Amanda heated up the food. As we clink our glasses and take a sip, I noticed that she had barely sipped hers. In fact, the wine barely touched her lips. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Honey, I have news." I looked at her. She completely captured my attention. What's happening? It's not just me. This concerns us. Amanda put down her glass. Now she really had my attention. She took a small white plastic stick about 10 centimeters long from her pocket and handed it to me across the table. I looked at this piece of plastic as if it were a grenade ready to explode in my face. What is this? For a smart person, you can be pretty stupid sometimes. This is a pregnancy test. I am pregnant. Amanda, eyes wide and eyebrows raised her voice slightly to emphasize her words. Damn it. My mouth opened, but the words that were in my brain did not come out. 5 seconds passed, and finally I said, damn it. I jumped up and hugged Amanda and kissed her. Wow. And then, thinking that I needed confirmation, he asked, are you sure? Of course, I'm sure. I did 10 such tests, and 2 days ago I went to the doctor. So yes, I'm sure I'm pregnant. The planner in me was running 1,000,000 miles an hour as thoughts filled my brain. I realized that this was a game changer for us. Now I need to change something in my work. I need to be at home. I need to spend more time with my wife. No more weeks away from home. I had new responsibilities, and I needed to put Amanda and the baby first. This was a game changer for me. Amanda. Telling Michael that I was pregnant was incredibly stressful, and I didn't realize it until I was next to him handing over the pregnancy test. A million thoughts were running through my head, and chief among them was the question, is Michael the father of my child? I prayed it was him. I looked at the calendar 1,000,000 times and figured out the date I got pregnant and thought Michael was most likely the father. But a small part of my brain still worried that it wasn't true. Modern medicine is almost certain about the date of conception, but my doctor said that even with all the science, the exact date of conception remains an estimate. The error can be up to a week or more. The date of conception was based on the date of my last period. I was most fertile about 2 weeks after my last period started. But damn, how could my IUD fail? I was planning on removing it, but haven't done so yet. It doesn't matter now. Now I need to manage the men in my life. Now I need to control my life and bring my husband home as soon as possible. 6 months later. Michael. Amanda is now 7 months pregnant and growing bigger every day. I can feel the baby kicking and pushing when I'm near her. I lie in bed at night, holding her, counting her movements. The baby sleeps when Amanda sleeps and moves when she is awake, or so it seems to me. It's a little absurd, I know, but that's how it seems. I almost stopped traveling for work. I went to the bosses and said I needed to make changes. If they won't let me change my travel schedule, I'll be happy to just quit my job and they can find a replacement for me. Strangely, they didn't mind too much and agreed that I could shorten my work trip and work remotely from Washington or New York. After much discussion, Amanda and I decided to live in Washington while she was pregnant and that she would also work remotely from home. It took some getting used to, and we both still needed to travel a bit, but we spent 90% of the time together. Living with my wife full-time was different. I mean, being together so close was a challenge for both of us. I forced us to put down our laptops and phones and go outside for physical activity twice a day. We walked several miles twice a day, and it was time to put aside work and think about each other. Our sex life intensified the more we were together. We were less urgent, now it was gentle and loving. I wanted to make time for Amanda's needs, and it was common for us to spend time naked in our bedroom during the day. I loved the feel of her body, and she responded to my touch. It's so different being with her full time. In my defense, I grew up to be a very independent person, and my military training reinforced that sense of independence. I had to rely on myself first. I always knew I had a dedicated team of professionals behind me supporting me, but at the end of the day, the responsibility for getting the job done was mine. My current job was the same. Traveling the world as I did was further proof of this skill that I had perfected. Now I need to learn new skills. Yes, it was a new world for me. Being a full-time husband and father was new territory that I needed to master, otherwise everything would be chaotic, and my role in the world was to bring order to the chaos and make sense of it all. 6 months later. Amanda. Oh my God, I'm so tired and I really need to take a shower. I can actually smell myself, I think. The baby has fallen asleep, and Michael is trying to sort out his email. I'm going to jump in the shower, freshen up, and grab a bite to eat. Motherhood is a lot of work. How did my mom and dad deal with it? A child changes everything for us. Emma Victoria is now 4 months old and always hungry. Breastfeeding was a little challenging for me at first. My own body produces the milk that my baby feeds. It's strange, illogical. As a New Yorker, I'm used to eating out a lot, and thinking that my body is a restaurant for my baby, well, that's different. I don't think it's that weird now. I just do it. The baby will soon switch to bottle feeding and begin to taste delicious purees from the blender. Puree of carrots and other vegetables must be absolutely delicious. Ah, parenthood. Michael takes to fatherhood like a duck takes to water. He organizes everything so well and divides problems into manageable parts, and his ability to go almost without sleep. I don't know how he does it. He goes for a run every day. He leaves around 4:30 am. I don't know how far he runs, but when he returns, he takes a shower and quietly climbs into bed with me, hugging me. I almost forgot about my random afternoon activities in New York with Jake. He's a good lover, but he has his own life, and I have mine, so that part of my life is over. The company wants me to return to work soon. The managing partner calls me weekly to check on me, but it is clear to me that he wants to know when I will return to work. He wants me to take over another part of the firm, perhaps contracts or criminal defense. I think contracts are better for me now. We agreed that I could work from home several days a week and spend 3 days in the office, so my maternity leave will end soon. It's time to hire a nanny. But where will we live? Michael. Life with a baby is starting to settle down, and I've made a deal that I can work from the New York field office for the next few months. Amanda and I bought a large apartment in the city, closer to her office, and arranged for a nanny. She did not live with us, but sometimes stayed overnight if necessary. She was a private student at the City College of New York, taking a combination of in-person and online courses. She wanted to become a paralegal, so she decided that working for Amanda could give her an advantage in getting a permanent job after graduation. I'm still based in Washington, but I'll be based out of the New York field office. My many superiors are keen for me to return to full-time duties and have informed me that my first task will be to return to London and assist the British Security Service. This will not be earlier than in a month. We have a lot to do to get settled into our new apartment in New York and make sure Emma and Amanda are okay. I'm used to living out of a bag. I need very little to survive. Perhaps this is a consequence of my army training. Regardless, this means I'm easy to please when it comes to a place to live. Rebecca. I heard that he returned to the country. We've set up a new operation in Manchester after capturing the nasty bastards we were tracking at Heathrow Airport. These bastards formed easily, and we interrogated them daily to understand the rest. After a little persuasion, they began to put others in their network, and now we were working on the next link in the terrorist wheel. This was not a James Bond-style job. It was a lot of watching and a lot of boring days and nights waiting for someone to make a mistake. It also involved a lot of communication surveillance, so we had a lot of technology to listen in on their conversations. Mobile phones were easily tapped, but they used gaming systems that allowed players to talk to each other. This was much more difficult to crack, but we continued and slowly gained nuggets of information that allowed us to get closer. Michael didn't know that I was part of the team in Manchester. He was staying in a small hotel, and his cover was that he was doing academic research into local history. With his adorable black horn-rimmed glasses, he fit in perfectly with the look. I knocked on the door of his room. I heard movement from the other side, and after a few seconds the door opened. Here he is, wearing glasses and holding a book. A smile spread across his face, and he took off his glasses. Please come in. Michael's room was large compared to most hotel rooms. The agency must be happy you're back at work, judging by this suite. I laughed as I said this. They said they were pleased with me returning to field work. I'll probably end up paying part of the bill out of pocket, but whatever, I can't stay in these tiny boxes you call hotel rooms. Michael suggested a drink, and I agreed. We chatted for a few minutes about his newfound fatherhood, and then, as I expected, he got straight to the point. We spent the next 2 hours talking about our current project, what we planned to do, and how exactly we were going to do it. Infiltrating terrorist networks takes time and always a lot of money. Always with money. People can be bought with money, especially when they see how those who have money live compared to those who don't. Few terrorists actually care about the cause they serve. No, most of them are in it for the money they can send home to feed their loved ones in whatever nice little miserable place they came from. Ideology rarely buys food, medicine, and things. Ideology usually buys pain, suffering, and death. That's the way the world is. This has been the case for many millennia and will continue to be so. I could tell Michael had gotten down to business, and his thoughts about his family were now taking a back seat. He is incredibly analytical, and his ability to focus like a laser beam on a problem is what makes him so good at his job. We went to dinner, and of course, since we were in public, our conversation turned to mundane things. I wanted to know how he copes with fatherhood. I knew his daughter's paternity might be in question since his stupid wife was sleeping with another idiot she worked with. The stupid bitch didn't know what she had and couldn't keep her legs together when her husband was gone for more than a few days. I knew Michael knew, or at least I was pretty sure he did. But we are all civilized people, so this was never discussed. This man was so reserved. How he did it was beyond my understanding. I was furious when I found out that my husband slept with a nurse and got her pregnant. But being proper English women, we decided everything cleanly and without emotions overshadowing the plan. We divorced without much fuss, and I continued to look for what I really wanted, and I was successful. Michael. I expected a knock on the door after all. I knew that Rebecca was part of the team for this mission, so I was glad to see her. I put on my glasses and held the book in my hands to pretend that I wasn't expecting her visit so soon. I couldn't pretend for long. I took off my glasses and put them and the book on the table. I smiled when I saw her. I knew what would eventually happen that night, and it happened. I was hungry, so we went for a snack and a drink. I used this as an opportunity to tell her some stories about how I changed diapers and handled a newborn. I can fire a pistol while skydiving, but changing a dirty diaper is something the Army didn't train me for. If she could handle me telling her about being a father, she could handle everything else. The thing is, I wasn't the father. Amanda. Michael was on the road again for a while, and I returned to New York. This time to a larger apartment, and with a nanny to help manage Emma. The child grew quickly. I was getting back into shape and had lost almost all of the weight I had gained during pregnancy. My breasts were still a little bigger than before, but that's normal. I know that the first time I saw Jake, he stared at my breasts with eyes that said he wanted to take my breasts in his hands. This thought excited me. Michael did this almost every day, and it gave me the same reaction every time. It's surprising that I haven't gotten pregnant again yet, considering how often Michael and I have sex. I quietly told Jake that we couldn't continue with what we had. Unfortunately, this part of my life finished, at least for now. I knew from office gossip that Jake had moved on with a cute red-haired intern who worked in the torts department. He was very good at separating that part of his life from his family. He had been doing this for several years, and his bedpost was covered in nicks. Now I was one of these notches. That's life in a law firm, and everyone played the game, and everyone made a ton of money. Welcome to the legal profession in New York. Now my job is to be a good mother first and foremost, and to be a faithful wife first and foremost. Will I be able to do this? And how long? When he and I were separated, well, it was a completely different matter. At this time, I was a troublemaker. No, more like an adventurer. During this time, I was using the part of my brain that was the other Amanda. Amanda, ruler of the universe. Amanda, who was in control. Amanda, who told me what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, and who I wanted to do it with. I make the rules. God, I'm getting myself into this kind of crap. I just know it. 1 year later. Michael. Amanda and I just welcomed another child to our family. A nanny turns out to be indispensable as we combine family and work life. Entertainment sometimes appears, but much less often than I would like. The new baby is a boy. Michael Jr., I know what you're thinking. Amanda. Now I have a son. We named him Michael Jr. I have not yet decided whether I will do a DNA test for the child. I know this may be needed in the future, but right now I don't want to do it. If Michael is happy as a father, then I am happy as a mother and his wife. No need to rock this boat. I know what you're thinking. I'm a stupid bitch who can't keep her legs together when her husband isn't around. And you're right. But you don't know me and no one owns me. Nobody. Michael is my husband and the person I want to be with for the rest of our lives. I have a need, and unfortunately fate seems to have conspired against me twice. My need for control dictates what I do, when I do it, and who I do it with. The man I had been seeing about twice a month since returning to work after Emma was a new lawyer I liked, and after a few preliminary conversations and casual lunches together, I decided I wanted him. He didn't disappoint me. He's not better than Michael, just different. He's not a better lover, just different. He doesn't look better, just different. And so I started something that I might regret, but I did it anyway. Rebecca. What a stupid bitch this woman is, Amanda. She has a fantastic husband at home and still sleeps with all these horny lawyers she works with. Well, at least two of them. My sources in New York have been monitoring her extramarital activities, and I can tell you that Michael is not the father of this new child. How stupid can a woman be? Michael is keeping everything under wraps, and I guess his pride and ego dictate that whatever he plans, it will be a closely guarded secret. I'll find out eventually. I am a very patient person, and a couple of years ago, after finding out that Amanda was involved with other men, I decided to wait and knew that I would eventually get what I wanted. Michael. Michael. I've been avoiding the obvious for too long. I know I must act. I weighed my options. If I do nothing, and this is perhaps the easiest option, then I will have to accept that Amanda is not really my wife. Not in the sense that she belongs only to me. I will have to admit that she has never been and probably never will be just mine. I will have to share her with those she chooses. If I tell Amanda that I know she's cheating, that means there's a good chance we'll break up. She is stubborn as an old donkey, and the demand that she give up her connections may not please her. At first she will agree, but after 6 months or a year her needs will take over again. Her sense of complacency is so great that there is a demand on my part. Well, it would be tantamount to a declaration of war. Marriage shouldn't be a war. It must be love. He should be caring. He must be many things. It shouldn't be violent. Regardless of what Amanda wanted to do, I had conditions that I wanted met, otherwise we would have no hope of staying together. Loyalty, monogamy, these are simple questions for me. Yes or no. If not, then we will go our separate ways. So, to give myself space and figure out the situation, I returned to Washington. There was a lot of work that needed to be done. I needed to prepare reports and other plans. I stayed in the apartment and called Amanda every day to see how she and the children were doing. A week later, I got on my motorcycle and rode back to New York. During the trip, I rethought all the arguments I had been considering over the past week and knew what I needed to do. And how should I do this? The next day. Amanda, let's go out to dinner tonight. Maria agreed to stay and look after the children. I think we need to spend time together, away from the kids, just you and me. Amanda looked at me. Great idea, honey. Let's go to our favorite Italian restaurant that we haven't been to in months. Let's go there. So I made a reservation, and that night we both got cleaned up and went out. I ordered a bottle of Amanda's favorite wine, and we each poured a glass. We were both very quiet, and then after we ate, it was time for me to get down to business. Amanda, I have some things I want to discuss, and we need to figure it out. After Emma's birth, you know that the agency is taking DNA samples of all dependents in case they need to confirm their identities. I know it's not pleasant to think about, but if something were to happen to me or, God forbid, you or the children were targeted, having DNA is often helpful. Now, the DNA is stored in a database and used only when needed. Michael Jr.'s DNA is there too. I swabbed his cheek shortly after he was born. Amanda's complexion paled and her eyes widened. Her head began to bob, and then her eyes rolled back into her head, and she briefly lost consciousness. I grabbed her and supported her so that she wouldn't fall out of the chair and hurt herself. Amanda. Oh shit, he knows. My vision suddenly disappeared and the room began to spin. Is this an earthquake? Michael held my shoulders and held a glass of water in front of me. Here, drink some of this water, Amanda. I took a sip, then a long gulp. My heart was racing and so was my head. My whole life flashed before my eyes in a nanosecond. What have I done? Oh shit, now what? It took several minutes before I regained control of my senses, stopped hyperventilating, and realized that I urgently needed to go to the toilet. I stood up and said in a quiet, almost whispering voice, "I'll be right back." I ran to the ladies' room. My legs were like rubber, and I held on to things to hold on. I emptied the contents of my stomach into the toilet. Then, after 5 flushes, I sat on the toilet for a few minutes, trying to come up with a plan. The truth was an option, but at that moment any plan was a little vague. My infidelity was clearly exposed, and on top of that, Michael had proof of my deception, his daughter. Nothing could be clearer, so I decided that maybe it would be better to be honest and own up to my actions. After what seemed like an hour, I returned to the table. I half expected Michael to be gone. I was surprised to see that he was still there. He is not the type to take injustice lightly, so I knew that whatever retribution he planned would be carefully thought out and would be consistent with the crime committed. We just sat there without saying a word for what seemed like an eternity. I couldn't look him in the eye, but I knew his eyes were firmly fixed on my face. He was looking for every sign, every nuance of my soul that could be a signal for him. A signal that I will tell the truth. A signal that I will not try to get out of this situation. Why doesn't he explode at me? We're in a restaurant, that's why. The explosion and fireworks will happen later when we get home. His tone was very quiet when he finally spoke. Drink some more water. I think you need this. I took the glass and almost emptied it. That helped. But I couldn't speak. There were a million thoughts in my head, but not a single coherent one. Michael sat and looked at my face. After what seemed like an eternity, he stood up. Time to go. I realized that he didn't say, go home, just go. But we went home. What will he tell me when we get there? Moreover, what will I tell him? I was exposed as a fool who had made a huge mistake. I couldn't get out of it. No, DNA doesn't lie. But I lied. Not a word was said either by me or by him on the way home. When we walked in the door, our nanny greeted us and told us that both children were fast asleep and she was about to go out. After the door closed, I sat on a chair and waited for the axe to fall. Michael went to the kitchen, got himself a beer, and brought me a glass of wine. I looked at him as I took the glass. There was more silence. Then he started. Michael, when I confirmed the DNA results, I was, without a doubt, devastated. I wanted to be a father. I knew that one day I would become a father, and this was what I was waiting for. I knew Amanda was a woman with needs, and I knew that when I was not around, she met these needs very carefully. I think some may think my approach is crazy and stupid, but I thought I was a realist in the modern world. Fool. Especially to think that my wife will give up her affairs when we decide to start a family. Well, now everything was laid out on the table. I wasn't a father. My wife got pregnant, twice, by other men. It was a big blow to my male ego and pride. So I made a plan. I'm very good at planning. I take pride in the detailed and often complex plans I need to create as part of my job. I imagined all sorts of plans to resolve this situation. I imagined all sorts of things, but in the end, it didn't matter. Amanda had 2 children who needed a mother, so that meant my plan had to take their needs into account. After much thought, I decided on the simplest plan. This will be the best for everyone. This will, to some extent, satisfy my need for partial retribution and leave us both with our dignity. So, after offering Amanda a glass of wine and grabbing a beer while sitting in the living room of our apartment, I revealed my plan. Amanda. My heart was beating 1,000 beats per minute. My ears were buzzing with the sound of my heart. The rapid knock was deafening. I looked at Michael and saw his mouth move, but I didn't hear a word he said. His expression was calm, but when my vision cleared and I was able to understand what was happening, I still didn't quite understand. I took a long sip of wine in my glass. It helped clear my mind. It's no wonder wine is so popular. It brings clarity to many things. Amanda, before we continue, I want to share with you my plan regarding the news that neither of the children are mine. He said this so calmly and confidently that it was difficult for me to understand whether he was angry. Michael is very self-controlled, almost too much. As you can imagine, I was very devastated to learn that neither Emma nor Michael Jr. were my children. I think they really are my children, but I didn't make them. No, it was another man's joy. Someone else got the privilege of creating these children. Michael took a sip of his beer, then continued. When I opened the letter with the DNA results, well, you can imagine my shock. Finding out that both my children were not mine, but some other men's, took some getting used to. I'm not sure I fully understand it even now. I'm a smart person, so I understand everything quickly. He took another sip of beer, less this time. DNA is an amazing thing. It's almost magical how it works. She can distinguish between billions of people, and with a level of confidence that is staggering. I'm not a scientist, but this really amazes me. Another small sip. So I guess what you're wondering right now is, what am I going to do with these DNA results? Good question. One that I can answer by asking you a question. Why? Michael looked at me with laser precision. He was completely serious now. I think he expected me to say something, but my brain was unable to formulate a coherent sentence. I don't know what to tell you, darling. I spoke in a very quiet voice. I was guilty as accused and ready to put my own noose on myself. But the company always teaches that the best defense is a good offense. When the evidence is against you, attack the victim. Michael took a small sip. Well, could we be honest for a minute? Who are the fathers of your children? His question was so sharp. This is one of the differences between us. He was taught to quickly get to the root of the problem with minimal delay and fuss. I was taught that truth is often flexible and can be molded to fit the needs of a situation. This is legalese for making up alternative facts if the ones in front of you are too judgmental and dangerous. It doesn't matter, the DNA results. You are the father of our children. Michael tilted his head slightly to the side. He does this when he hears an excuse that he considers nonsense. I knew that he probably already knew who the two men were that I dated while he was away for a long time. You can tell me that you don't like those two children sleeping in their beds. Can you tell me you're not proud to be their father? I had to turn the situation around and put him on the defensive. He took one last sip of his beer and placed the empty glass on the table. You did not answer my question, and I don't intend to. It does not matter. You are the father of my children, and you are the person with whom they will grow up to be like him, and you are the person who will teach them all the amazing things that fathers teach their children. So you are the father. End of story. Michael looked at me, tilting his head to the other side. Okay, I can see that you're not going to be honest with me. Now I have a much better idea of what I need to do. With that, he stood up and walked into our home office and closed the door behind him. Crap. What is he doing? Alchemy went to the door and tried to open the handle. There was no lock on the door, but he propped the door with a chair to prevent it from opening. I knocked. Michael, what are you doing? There was no answer. I knocked again. Michael, whatever you're doing there can wait. I need to talk to you. The door opened abruptly. Now you want to talk. When I asked you a simple question a few minutes ago, you refused to give a simple answer. Now you're ready to talk. Too late. Michael walked past me and headed into our bedroom. He pulled out his old, worn-out suitcase from the depths of the closet, opened it, and began to put his things in there. I watched, too stunned to do anything. Finally, I came to my senses. What are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you leaving? Michael looked at me. I'm leaving. You decided not to tell me the truth, so until you change your mind and want to talk about business, I'm leaving. I have other things to do and other places where I can do this. It didn't go well at all. Are you going to Washington? He looked at me with determination. What do you care about that? I'm sure you'll have plenty of company if you want it after I'm gone. He continued to put his clothes in his suitcase and then returned to our office to find his laptop and an old, battered leather briefcase. Once he was sure he had everything he needed, he grabbed both his suitcase and briefcase and headed for the door. He turned and looked at me. I will have my personal mobile phone, so if you suddenly feel like telling me the truth, don't hesitate to call. If you're not willing to tell me what I want to know, don't waste your time and mine. With that short speech, he turned and walked out, closing the door behind him. So that's it. In a couple of hours, my life collapsed around me. My secrets were revealed and my husband left. God, I went to the refrigerator, took a large glass of wine and sat down at the dining table. I took a sip and suddenly realized that I was holding my breath. Oh shit, what have I done? It was not a question, rather the realization that I had caused big trouble, and now I will have to pay for my crimes. My sense of self-satisfaction convinced me that it was normal to have a lover on the side. I mean, there are many others doing the same thing. It's almost expected among my colleagues at the firm, and I've known several of my friends who have spent their lives cheating on their husbands. Most of them handled it pretty well. I guess the difference is that they didn't get their lovers pregnant twice. I just realized this little mistake. Crap, Michael. I tried hard to control my anger when I confronted Amanda with the DNA results that showed both Michael Jr. and Emma had been sired by other men. Well, how much more obvious would it have to be to conclude that my wife has been unfaithful in 3 short years? I might have almost accepted the fact that she had an affair, but allowing lovers to father children was what broke my back. No, there was no way I could stand it. I asked the doorman to call me a taxi, and on the way to the airport my hands began to shake. I folded my hands in my lap to stop the shaking. This has never happened to me before. I've been in situations where I held a loaded rifle and prepared to actually fight the enemy. I fired this weapon to defeat the enemy, and not once did I think about the moral or ethical issues involved in taking the life of a person who wanted to take my life. My job was not to die for my country, but to make the enemy die for him. Everything is very simple. But here I am, sitting in a taxi on the way to JFK Airport, and my hands are shaking. Am I losing my nerve? I took a few deep breaths to calm myself and realized that my anger was now coming to the surface. I don't usually feel anger, just determination. Complete the task as quickly as possible with minimal collateral damage. That's what I did. I caught a shuttle to Washington and then another taxi to the apartment. When I walked in the door, the message light on the phone was flashing. I went to the refrigerator and realized that it was empty, no food or drink. I poured a glass of ice water and pressed play. Most of the messages were from telephone marketers, but none from Amanda. I deleted all messages and turned off my phone. I made a mental note to call the phone company and cancel the service as soon as possible. I decided that I wouldn't need it for the foreseeable future. 3 months later. Michael, Syria is a very hot place, regardless of the time of year. The resilience of the people here is amazing. That they can survive in a land of dust and dirt is admirable. Of course, the main source of money now is oil production. Traditional cash crops such as fruits and vegetables are still important, but oil is now the cash cow and a coveted source of wealth. Syria is a country of about 17 million people strictly controlled by the Assad family and the Ba'ath Party. The civil war has torn the country apart, and when you add ISIS, Russia, and now us, it doesn't bode well for the people. To say the country is in disarray is an understatement. I had been in the Middle East for 2 months, working to provide intelligence support to combined joint task force operations. Several nations have worked together to try to bring peace and some stability to Syria and stop ISIS. Easier said than done. Each country wanted limited participation and was not prepared to go the way of Afghanistan. This little mess is still going on with no end in sight. Most Western countries decided to fold up their tents, declare partial victory, and go home. The Taliban are slowly resurfacing and seizing control. I want to stay in the game, do my job, and then move on to another task. I still have my personal cell phone and check it once a day, usually before bed, but there are no calls from Amanda. I assumed that she would have one of the lawyers at her firm prepare the divorce papers and send them to me, but nothing yet. I was willing to be civil and just sign them, send them back so my lawyer and her lawyer could work things out, and I would be done with her. Do not misunderstand me. I loved this woman. Hell, I even loved our children. Sorry, her children. They were innocent in all this, and I planned to create a fund to pay for their university education. This would be a trust fund to pay for school. I talked to my lawyer about it, and he could easily do it and include it in the divorce agreement. She could keep her apartment in New York, and I could keep my apartment in Washington. Since I brought my investment portfolio into the marriage, we would only share income earned during the marriage. This meant that I would keep about 80% of what I invested through my brother's firm. My boss was visiting from Washington, and after we talked for a long time about the mission, he looked at me and his comment about how I looked like hell surprised me a little. Mike, you need a break from all this crap. Why don't you take a couple weeks off and recharge your batteries? Heck, spend some of that money you have in the bank and relax and have fun. Then you and I will talk about your next assignment. I have a couple of challenging problems that I think you'll enjoy. He was a Southerner, and his slow talk and manner of speech reminded me of the cartoon character Foghorn Leghorn. I expected him to say, "I'm talking, boy." He was as straightforward a person as there was in the business, and if he said I needed a break from the action, then I really needed a break. Crap. 3 days later, I was sitting in business class on Emirates Airlines flying to London. I booked a room in a nice hotel near Buckingham Palace. London is one of my favorite cities, and I have always enjoyed my time there. On the second day, after a tour of the British Parliament, I relaxed in my room with a beer and planned the next few days. I rented a car and was planning to go to Scotland. There was a knock on the door of my room. Unusual for this hotel, as there is always a guard at the entrance, and the front desk never gives room numbers without the guest's permission. Who could it be? My instincts were high as I quietly walked to the door to look through the peephole. It was black, so whoever was on the other side covered it with a finger or tape. Crap, I didn't have a gun with me. The British do not encourage carrying weapons without an official reason, and I was officially a tourist. There was a little space to the left of the door, so I stood there, trying to decide what to do. If someone on the other side of the door had a weapon, standing in front of the door was a bad idea. If I opened the door, they could just shoot through the door, and it would be game over for me. So I stood aside and waited. There was no sound from the other side. My heartbeat increased noticeably, and I tried to control my breathing so as not to make noise. There was another knock. I looked again to see who it was. I haven't booked anything from room service, and they always announce themselves. There was only one person who could know where I was. I decided to take a chance and open the door. I switched sides so that I was on the side of the door where it opens when I turn the handle. Was I surprised to see who was standing there? Yes and no. My guest said, "Hi, Michael. Nice to see you." Rebecca, I found out that Michael Stewart is in London. It's been almost a year since I last saw him. He looked a little gaunt and thin, although his face was tanned. He just stood in the doorway of his hotel room and looked at me with great surprise. I could tell he was processing information in his head. He was trying to figure out how I knew where he was. This didn't surprise me at all. "You're going to invite the lady in, or should I just stand here in the hallway and talk to you?" He shook his head and blinked. "Please come in." He stood aside so I could enter, then closed the door and bolted it. His eyes ran up and down my body from head to feet, then up again. I could tell he was looking at my left hand to see if there had been any new jewelry there since we last saw each other. There weren't any. We both hesitated a little and then hugged and started kissing. He was like someone possessed. He was hungry. He wanted touch and intimacy from me. Within seconds, we started tearing each other's clothes off and throwing them on the floor. We had sex until we were completely exhausted, but Michael was just getting started. He dragged me into the shower, and after we were cleaned up, he said, "I'm terribly hungry. Let's go eat." We went to a restaurant recommended by the concierge, and a taxi took us to the door. Michael asked the concierge to call ahead, and the head waiter showed us to a private table. The place was nice, not too fancy as we weren't dressed very smartly, but the food and wine were very good. After the wine was brought, he began to speak. "I'm not surprised that you knew I was here. It was difficult for me to decide whether to call you or write to you. Many months passed. A lot of things happened. I didn't know what was happening to you. When I saw you standing in the hallway outside my hotel room doors, I immediately understood what I wanted to do. Thank you. Now it's my turn. I was quietly watching what you were doing. I knew that your wife had another child, and if I may speak frankly, I know who the children's parents are. This, of course, is presumptuous of my side, but if you are not completely mad, you should know how I feel about you." Michael smiled when I said that. He nodded slightly. "I think I have a good idea, and I think I have a much better idea of what I want. The last few months have given me the opportunity to think very carefully about this. I made some decisions." I looked at him and had to ask, "Are you ready to share your solutions?" "Yes, I have to be completely honest with you when I say this." Now I started to wonder what he was thinking. I'm a good judge of people, and my entire professional training has been to read what people are going to do before they do it. Michael was the same. That's what made us both good at our jobs. "I'm ready for what you have to say." And so began our conversation, which lasted all night. Michael was exhausted when he finished, and to be honest, so was I. My pulse sometimes increased, but at other times, what he said simply confirmed what I had already guessed. This stern soldier and warrior was predictable when it came to his own life. His sense of honor and loyalty was one of his guiding principles and determined his actions. "Michael, it's been almost 6 months since I confronted Amanda about her children's DNA. I packed up, left New York, and returned to field work for the agency. While I was on holiday in London, I was pleasantly surprised by Rebecca's visit. It was a visit that defined the rest of my life. I also received a call from my brother. He had news about several things. I asked Charles to take care of some things for me in his free time, although he doesn't have much. But what good are brothers if they can't do you a favor once in a while? I asked him to keep an eye on Amanda and what she was doing. I hadn't heard from her in months, so I assumed she was getting ready to file for divorce. With this in mind, I asked Charles to find ways to protect my investment so that any attempts by Amanda to claim alimony, child support, or other resources could be validly challenged. One more thing. I was looking to sell a condominium in Washington, so I gave Charles power of attorney to sell it and transfer the money to my investment account. Charles was working with my lawyer and wanted to talk. He began, "Hey, Mike, I have good news and more news. Where should I start?" Probably not very good at first. "Okay, Amanda isn't doing anything to start the divorce proceedings, at least as far as I and your lawyer know. I tried to contact her, but I didn't get a single answer. I even went to you, sorry, to her apartment, and I just talked to the nanny. By the way, she is very nice. If you want my opinion on this, the nanny told me that Amanda was not visible in her office, but I heard them playing in the other room. So I think they're fine. I haven't gone to her office yet, but I'll go if you want." "Thanks, but that's not necessary, at least not yet. What else do you have?" "Okay, I sold your condo in Washington. I got a good profit on it. It sold for almost double the price you paid for it, and after fees, I put almost $2 million into your investment account. And now the really good news. Your account is now just over $22 million. He paused for effect. I was silent. Finally, my brain caught up with what he was saying. "Holy crap, how the hell did this happen? Did you break some insider trading laws or something?" My brother was laughing hysterically on the other end of the phone. "No, little brother, it's all perfectly legal and it's all yours. I'm very good at picking winners in the investment business, and I did. And I put it all in a perfectly legal account, which is managed by me and taxed at preferential rates by the Irish government. They are interested in people investing in their country, and I did it. Well, you did it, and now you can reap the benefits. Oh my God, I find this hard to believe. I don't doubt you, but I'm sure you understand my skepticism. How can I access the money? Don't worry. I'll send you a package as soon as you tell me where you are, and you'll see how to access your money. By the way, where are you? London. I've been here for a couple of weeks now. I don't know how long. Look, I love you immensely, and I owe you a huge debt, so be patient with me if I have questions later. Don't worry. I have to go. The children are calling us for a walk, and my dear wife is looking at me askance. After I ended the call, I sat down and thought about how I became rich. Well, quite wealthy, I suppose. This kind of money opened up new opportunities for me. Perhaps the agency will have to take a back seat in my future. Right now, I still have a wife who didn't really want to be a wife. Her children were another consideration. I started writing down things that needed to be done in the coming days. 1. Decide what to do with Amanda. 2. Decide what to do with working at the agency. 3. Where do I want to live? 4. What do I want to do? 5. What to do with Rebecca. I had a lot of questions and no real answers. Unfortunately, I was an expert at drawing up plans for an agency, but not so gifted in my personal life. My mind went through 1,000 different thoughts that night, and by the morning I had no answers. Rebecca. Husband guy I want in my life has returned to London. Now the challenge is to keep him in my life. I think I have a pretty good idea how to do this. The next few weeks will be key. Time will tell. I have a good idea of what Michael wants, and I'm fully prepared to give it to him. He wanted a wife who would be faithful to him. He wanted a family that belonged to him. He wanted to live without deception and hiding the truth from each other. It was easy for me. Amanda. It's been a few months since Michael left. His last words were to call him when I'm ready to tell the truth. God, how hard this is to accept. The truth is that I love him. The truth is that both children are not his. The truth is that I was unfaithful to the man I thought I loved. I did it because I thought I could do it with impunity, and he would never know. Even if he found out, he would accept me for who I am, love me no matter what, and accept the children as his own. I was mistaken. Stupid. Now how do I fix this? Can I fix this? Every time I pick up the phone to call him, I stop and put it back. My shame and guilt overwhelm me to such an extent that I don't know what to say if he answers. You'd think that as a lawyer I'd be better at lying, that I would make up a story to convince him to forgive me and come home. Home to me and the children. You'd think I'd be remorseful, but I'm not. I'm still dating someone. I need a man in bed a couple of times a week. Now more than ever. God, I'm so spoiled. I know it, but I want Michael back very badly. Losing him was a big mistake. How could I be so stupid? I have to go to him on my knees and beg for a second chance. Or can I? Do I have the strength to be humble? I'm not sure. This is an internal debate that has been going on in my head since he left. This is what stops me from calling him. This is what prevents me from calling his brother to find out where he is and going there. Crap, I have 2 children to think about, but honestly, I haven't let their need for a father push me into action. It's selfish, I know, but they're still little and don't understand the difference. The nanny hinted that she was leaving in a few months. She graduates from high school and her boyfriend, and she moved to Maine. He has been offered a job there, and they are planning to start a family. Even the nanny understood her life better than I did. I'm such a loser. I need to sort myself out and do something. I expect the divorce papers to arrive any day now, and then it will be too late. I need to stop sitting on my hands and go find my husband. Michael. My boss called me the other day. One of my 3 cell phones beeped, and I had to remember which one was which. He was very interested to know where I was. When I told him I was still in London, he visibly exhaled and said, "Okay, stay there. You'll be working with the British. They're complaining that we're not sharing information with them in a timely manner. Go figure it out. So your new task is get close to their people and stay there until I say otherwise. Got it. No problem, got it. This might work in my favor. He added, if you have any questions, call me, day or night. I just love getting calls at 2 a.m. Oh yeah, now get to work and send me your daily report the usual way. I hung up. This was an opportunity for me. I agonized over returning home and what to do with Amanda. In all the time since I left, she has never contacted me. Not one call, email, or text message. I told her to call when she was ready to tell me the truth. I assumed she wasn't ready for this. When it will be ready is still unknown. I knew deep down that Amanda and I were done. My love for her was not enough to satisfy her needs. I knew this for a long time, but I hoped that she would change. The DNA test results certainly helped clarify the facts, and with the realization that both of her children were not mine, this was definitely the straw that broke the bank. If she was so afraid of the truth, then maybe it was best to just end it and move on. I decided to call my lawyer the next morning and take care of it. Amanda, every morning I wake up and think about Michael. I'm thinking about calling him. I take the phone and then put it back. I'm so ashamed of what I did. I got pregnant twice by other men and gave birth to their children. I tried to pretend that Michael was their father. He was a good father. He is the bravest man I know. He doesn't take any crap, and all he got from me was crap. How can I look him in the eye? How can I beg him to come home and continue to try to be a father to two children who are not his? How can he look at me again and not think that I will be unfaithful? Will he respect and trust me? I didn't deserve his respect or trust. I'm so spoiled. I need to go to work. As soon as I stepped out of the office elevator, I was greeted by a woman dressed in a formal pantsuit. There was a serious look on her face. I thought I recognized her as the bailiff we've used in the past. I almost remembered her name when she said, "Are you Amanda Windsor?" I nodded. She said, "I'm sorry, madam, but I need you to say it out loud." "Yes, I'm Amanda Windsor." She handed me a large envelope that usually contains legal documents. I automatically reached out and took it. She continued, "You have been officially presented with the documents. Thank you." And with that, she turned and left. I watched as she walked to the elevator and pulled out her cell phone, sending a quick message. I receive legal documents all the time while working on various cases, but this time it was much more personal. I sat down in the chair in the office reception area, put down my purse and briefcase, and tore the end of the envelope. It was a declaration of divorce. Oh shit, Michael is tired of waiting for my call. He's tired of it. I sat for several minutes, staring at the carpet. One of the secretaries saw me and asked if I needed anything. I exhaled deeply and thanked her, then grabbed my things and headed to my office. When I got there, I threw my things on the sofa and saw a large vase with red roses. There was a card in a sealed envelope. I smelled the beautiful flowers and sat down to open the card. I read the words, "Dear Amanda, I waited months for you to call, but you never did. I understand if you don't want to do this. I think it's time for both of us to move on. I don't know what you did other than being a mother to two small children and working full-time, but I guess that's none of my business. Whatever you do, I hope it makes you happy. If you haven't received it yet, you will soon receive the documents from my lawyer. It's time for us to leave our marriage behind and move on. Our marriage was, on the one hand, a mistake for both of us, and on the other, at least for me, something that I will look back on with love. I set up a trust fund for Emma and Michael to pay for their university fees when the time came. Each account has $250,000, which should be enough to pay for school and living expenses if they decide to leave for school. My brother is the trustee and will send you the details later. You are smart, and I know that everything you do in the future will be successful. Take care, make the right decisions, and pass on my best wishes to little Emma, Michael, and your family. Michael, that's all. End, damn it. How could I be so stupid? The best man I know and was married to tells me it's over, and it's all my fault. And the stupidest thing is that I don't even know where he is. The company did not receive anything useful from me that day. I went down to the family law department and asked a colleague to look over the divorce papers. Everything was very civilized, but the package of documents sent by Michael's lawyer emphasized that the children were not Michael's biological descendants. Therefore, questions about child support did not arise. He offered to pay off the mortgage on an apartment in New York, and I would receive a lump sum payment of $500,000 over 5 years. We're done here. He didn't want to meet the children. And why should he? They are not his. They were so small that in time they would forget him. Well, what to do? Is there any point in trying to talk to him? Will he let me see him after all these months when I didn't dare call him? Where is he? This damn agency is very secretive about what they do and where they do it. I know that he often comes to London. Maybe he's there. Maybe I can ask his lawyer where he is. Yes, that's the plan. Find out where he is, and then maybe go to him. It took several days of correspondence between my lawyer and Michael's lawyer, but eventually I got an address, and it was in London. I plucked up my courage and bought a ticket to Heathrow. I left my mother to look after the children in my apartment. She didn't know that Michael had left me. She also didn't know that I stupidly got pregnant by other men and not my husband. After landing, I took a taxi to a hotel near Michael's address. It was next to the famous Hyde Park. I checked in, got myself ready, put on my best outfit that I knew Michael liked. It was a very elegant black dress and 3-inch heels. He always said I looked sexy as hell in this outfit, and I planned to use it as a weapon to get him back. It was early evening when I was ready for the battle to begin, and I took a taxi to the hotel where he was staying. The front desk was initially hesitant to tell me his number, but after I showed them my ID and they were convinced that I was a relative, they relented and told me the number. Michael was in a room on the top floor. The hotel was not very tall, but was luxurious in a typically British, understated manner. I figured it was expensive. I got out of the elevator and headed towards the door. I took a deep breath and prepared to see my husband after almost 7 months. 7 months without contact. I pressed the bell. Rebecca. I heard the doorbell and went to see who it was. In my job, you never open a door without knowing who and what is on the other side. When I looked through the peephole, I was very surprised by what I saw. Michael, someone has come to see you. You might want to see who it is before you open the door. I've been expecting this person for a while now. Michael looked at me with a puzzled expression for a few seconds and then realized who I was talking about. You open the door, please. I knew that when I opened the door, the woman on the other side would be very surprised to see me. She wasn't necessarily expecting me and didn't know who I was, but it couldn't be otherwise at the moment. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. The woman looked at me with a surprised expression. I'm looking for Michael Stewart. The front desk said this is his number. I stepped aside slightly and said, please come in. I pointed her towards the living room. She tried to make sense of it all as she slowly entered. Michael stood there. He spoke first. Hi, Amanda. It's nice to finally see you. I see you were able to find me. What brings you to London? Amanda looked at Michael and then at me. Her surprise that I was here with her husband was, well, she didn't expect to see me here. I'm not sure what she expected. Eventually, they were separated for several months, and he instructed his lawyers to file divorce papers. I knew everything about the origins of her children. It was I who collected the envelope that was quietly left for Michael on his desk at the agency in Washington. If Amanda was stupid enough not to want this wonderful man, then I quickly made him mine. Getting pregnant twice by other men she slept with on the side doesn't speak of love and commitment to me or anyone else with a grain of common sense. So her loss became my gain. Michael continued, let me take your coat. He took her coat and hung it in the closet by the door. Can I offer you a drink? Wine, if possible. Michael went to the bar fridge and pulled out a bottle of white wine, opened it, and poured her a glass. He also poured the two of us, me a Diet Coke and himself an ice water. We sat in the living room, looking at each other warily and not saying a word. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "So, Amanda, you've come a long way to talk to me, so get started. This is your time, so tell me what you want to say." Amanda took a long sip from her glass. "Okay, I'm just a little confused. I didn't expect you to have someone with you. I thought we'd talk in private, just the two of us." I looked at Michael. "I can keep you too if you want." He quickly replied, "No, I want you to stay. There's nothing we can say to each other that we can't say in front of you." I nodded and looked back at Amanda. She took another sip. She began, "Michael, I'm very ashamed of the way I acted. I guess even thinking that you might come home is more than I can expect. I don't know what to say except that I was very stupid, and the way I acted was, well, you didn't deserve it. Please forgive me." The look on Michael's face said it all to me. He tried to be civil and end this as quickly and painlessly as possible, but at the same time he was replaying in his head the violation of his trust in his wife. This was something that, on a very personal level, could not be tolerated. I knew exactly what he was thinking. I experienced the same thing. Michael took a sip of his water and exhaled. "Amanda, I don't know what I can tell you except that when I found out that the two children I thought were mine were actually fathered by other men, that, for me, was something that goes beyond all imagination when it comes to trust, fidelity, honor, and loyalty. I loved you until the second I found out that you deceived me twice. You betrayed two innocent babies for mine, knowing that their fathers were your lovers. This was the biggest lie of all, and it was for me, your husband. So, if you have any illusions that we have a future together, forget about them now. We do not have it. I wish you all the best and a safe journey home." Michael stood up, signaling that Amanda should leave. She put the glass on the table, and I took her coat out of the closet. Michael helped her put it on. As she stood at the door, she looked at the two of us and said quietly, "I'm so sorry, Michael." Michael nodded. "And me too." She left his life forever. This was all over. 2 years later, somewhere in Scotland. Michael. I picked up my daughter, Adrian, and carried her across the yard to the barn. We have 4 horses and many cats who have chosen to call our barn home. Rebecca followed behind me. We both had rubber boots on as it was damp and the yard was very wet. We bought an old estate with a big house and about 1,000 acres of land. We even have our own fishing pond. I'm not a big fisherman, but I've tried this a few times. Rebecca is now about 6 months pregnant with our second child. When my ex-wife found me in London a couple of years ago, we had just learned that Rebecca was pregnant with Adrian. Now we live in the village. I like to think of myself as a country gentleman, but I know I can live anywhere as long as I have my family by my side. My wife and children are my life. My brother called a few days ago. He continues to make good investment choices, which is good news for me as I need money to begin the next phase of home renovations. Well, what's the use of money if you don't enjoy it? If they run out, I'll go back to work. Not sure what I would do, really. My greatest joy is having Rebecca and our daughter close to me. We don't know if we're having a boy or a girl this time, but it doesn't matter as long as the baby is healthy. I work on several projects a year as a contractor for my former employer. With budget cuts in the U.S. government, it is cheaper to hire outsiders to do some tasks and keep in-house employees busy with priority tasks. Rebecca runs our home and keeps me on track. I enjoy every moment. When I go to sleep next to Rebecca, I thank all the gods in heaven for the good fortune I have to be with her. I reluctantly close my eyes because I want to see the sun rise in the morning so I can spend another day with my family. Note that not everything we do in bed is sleep, but that is another story. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.